I wanted to get married. After my coming-of-age ceremony, the clan settled my dowry, 4 large chests. The owner of the Huang pawn shop valued everything at a total of 2,000 strings of cash. But I did not want to marry General Lai. I had seen him before. He was broad and burly, with a wide jaw, thick whiskers, a dissolute manner, and a shameless stare. More than once he had stared openly at the chests of the older women working in the garden. When one of them spat in his face, he laughed and licked the spittle from his lips. Even my elder cousin's personal maid called him an ugly toad, who played filthy tricks and a shameless old scoundrel with no sense of propriety. Unfortunately, he did have some military merit. Years ago, during the chaos on the northern frontier, he had carried the dying old marquis out of a field of corpses and fled for about 9 miles. Whenever there was good food or nourishing tonic, he offered it to his master first. While enemy soldiers pursued them, he fought desperately to protect the marquis and happened to kill one of their deputy commanders. From then on, his career soared, and he became an overbearing power within the household Sumyan even the heir's newly married wife had to yield to. Even a chicken or dog raised to heaven remained a chicken or dog. The filth beneath the skin could not be hidden. He had married 2 concubines, and both had been beaten to death by him. He himself was penniless, yet the sight of a woman was enough to make his mouth water from 3,000 feet away. Recently he had even become entangled with an older servant in the manor. At last the Marquis could no longer tolerate him, and planned to send him to a nominal post in the Mobe military camp, hoping the harsh frontier would correct his behavior. A man like that wanted to become my husband. I would never agree. But my elder cousin spoke first. Li Miaoer dropped to her knees and repeatedly struck her forehead against the floor. Father, brothers, Miaoer has been discourteous, but General Lai is a 5th-rank military officer and one of our own people. In rank, income, family background, courage and ability, how is he inferior to a minor clerk from a poor household? My brothers often praise his character. He merely lacks a virtuous wife to guide him. With the right woman beside him, he may yet become useful. She pressed a hand to her chest and coughed until tears gathered in her eyes. And there is my fate. Her shoulders trembled. Father, have you forgotten? Yesterday the physiognomist said that after Qing'er comes of age, her fate will clash with mine. If she remains in the capital, I can never be chosen as crown princess. Her words landed like a clod of earth dropped into the sea, stirring only rings of muddy ripples before the hall fell deathly still. One of us was the legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Yunyang, already favored by the Empress as a candidate for crown princess. The other was merely the illegitimate daughter of a distant branch of the clan. Living under their roof, I would be abandoned. But I had no time to grieve. I quietly shifted closer to Yunchai, the senior maid, and tugged lightly at her sleeve. Did you hear what elder cousin just said? That I would destroy everything she has? Yunchai stared at me blankly and shook her head. So it was the same as always, only I could hear it. No one inside or outside the Marquise's residence knew that my gentle, virtuous, impeccably proper elder cousin sometimes became another person. Her eyes would turn red with jealousy. Madness would fill her expression. She would speak in strange, sarcastic riddles, as though she feared me deeply. Most outrageously, she had once handed me over to traffickers. A coarse cloth covered my mouth and nose. I struggled like a fish on a chopping board while she stood nearby, watching coldly. As my strength faded, she suddenly screamed. Her pupils contracted. She rushed forward, tore me from the trafficker's hands, and ran. We hid in a villager's haystack, both of our hearts pounding. She trembled violently. Qingyi, what is happening? Who are those people? Didn't you hire them, elder cousin? She remembered nothing. It was as if she had just awakened from a nightmare. Her terror was real, and so was her confusion. Before long, the traffickers caught up. One of them laughed. So rumors really cannot be trusted. Everyone praises the young lady of the Marquis's household for being virtuous and kind, yet behind closed doors she cannot even tolerate her younger clan sister. I had heard correctly. What exactly was Li Miaoer doing? Why did she want to sell me and drive me away, yet also rescue me? Their footsteps drew closer. I could not let her make a sound. I tightened my fingers around the hairpin in my hand and was about to hold it against her neck when she suddenly pressed closer. The haystack was cramped, our bodies almost touching, and she had already returned to the harmless, delicate cousin I knew. Qing'er, what are they saying? I am so frightened. Will father come and save us? Her father was the Marquis of Yunyang. That was right. I could not harm her yet. If she was injured, there would be no place for me in the Marquis's residence. Fortunately, she obeyed me. She rested her head against my shoulder, borrowing my warmth to suppress her trembling. When I told her to stay silent, she did. At last, the city patrol arrived and brought us back to the residence. Everyone surrounded her, asking after her and comforting her. I waited until midnight. Then I slipped in through a side gate, climbed into her room, and used a sleeping draught I had taken from the traffickers to render her unconscious. I searched carefully for a long time before finding a crumpled sheet of paper hidden inside her jewelry box. The message was written in cinnabar read, "Beware Li Qingyi, she will cause your death. Send her away from the capital at once, as far as possible. It would be best if she never returns." The handwriting was wild. Even the traditional characters were missing strokes, like the clumsy tracing of a 3-year-old child who had only just begun to write. It was not my cousin's handwriting. At the time, however, I no longer had the strength to follow every clue and untangle every mystery. Some people rushed toward the truth like moths to a flame. Others were skilled at preserving a false peace, caring only that everything looked calm on the surface. I already had enough trouble, but that did not mean I would stand still and wait for the blade when she raised it against me. I would not marry General Lai, and I would not leave the capital. It was the Zhonghe festival. Blue pouches held mixtures of many grains, and the spring wind still carried a trace of cold. It was also the day Wei Lin was due to retrieve our marriage documents and take back the chests of betrothal gifts. I had deliberately dressed too lightly, a goose-yellow skirt, cloud-like black hair, and silk ribbons that fluttered in the wind. I looked like a bright butterfly in a blooming garden. That butterfly, however, carried an improper plan, and was merely waiting for the right moment to act. I circled the lotus pond 3 times. The first person to arrive was Li Miaoer. She bit her lip. "Qinger, why are you standing here? The wind is strong. Be careful not to catch cold." I ignored her. Dark shadows lay beneath her eyes, too deep even for powder to conceal. She had tossed and turned all night. "I only want what is best for you," she said, forcing herself to continue. "Wei Lin is not a suitable husband. General Lai may be rough and overbearing outside, but father can guide him, and he belongs to our household. No matter what, he would never treat you that way." I interrupted her. "Treat me what way? So elder cousin has heard that he drinks, gambles, and beats women. I thought you did not know, and sincerely wanted to find me a good marriage before sending me away from the residence." "No, that is not what I meant, Qinger." Her gaze darted aside. That familiar panic appeared again. For some reason, she feared me, yet she did not dare carry her cruelty through to the end. After thinking it over, I understood. She wanted to remove me, the calamity in her eyes, but she also wanted me to go willingly. She wanted me to understand her difficulties and absolve her. She wanted both the benefit and a clear conscience, using another person's fate as the price of her own virtue. She would ruin a life belonging to someone with a different surname, then use vague words and crocodile tears to build an image of benevolence. It was a distorted kind of hypocrisy. I understood her thoughts far too well. After the kidnapping attempt 2 years ago, I had won over a maid. I had little money, but I knew enough medicine to cure the illness afflicting the girl's parents. To repay me, she memorized my cousin's words and behavior whenever she served beside her, then reported everything to me. At first, they were only scattered fragments of private conversation. Nothing seemed important, but after 2 years, the pieces began to form a pattern. Li Miaoer often muttered to herself as though speaking to someone invisible. "Qinger is my younger clan sister. I cannot treat her like this. I will not believe the future you describe. You are only trying to frighten me. You even want to control my body. Tomorrow I will tell father and ask him to invite an eminent monk from the temple." "How could that be? Everything you predicted has come true. Will Qingyi truly cause my death? Striking first to gain the advantage is not wrong. I only want to live. I only want to change my fate." Yes, a wandering soul had taken up residence inside Li Miaoer. Sometimes I could even see its shadow. On my cousin's naturally graceful face, love and hatred twisted into something fierce. It screamed again and again, "Drive Li Qingyi away." Day after day, it poisoned her thoughts until she believed every word without question. How pitiful. But if someone could use any means necessary, stepping on another person's shoulders merely to improve her own life, then Sister Miaoer should understand me as well, should she not? At that thought, the corners of my lips curved. I was only joking. Everything elder cousin does must have its own reason. Marriage has always been decided by our uncles and elders. How could daughters like us interfere? I made my shoulders tremble, and my voice trembled with them. I have only stood here too long. The cold wind makes me feel chilled. A maid immediately moved to fetch a cloak, but Li Miaoer stopped her. She removed the cloak from her own shoulders and personally wrapped it around me, looking as though a burden had finally been lifted. It was a deep red fur cloak embroidered with 100 butterflies flying among flowers and curling clouds. It had been bestowed by the palace. How beautiful. I clasped her hand. Thank you, elder cousin. I will have it cleaned and return it to you. She pretended not to care and smiled. It is only an object. Qingji, as long as you understand my intentions, that is enough. I understand, elder cousin. You wish to do something wicked while preserving your good name. Such greed is not a virtue. I stroked the luxurious fur cloak with obvious reluctance. Poor thing, it had no idea how much fury it was about to carry back to its owner. Once my cousin had vanished around the bend, I threw the cloak to the ground without hesitation, shifted a loose pebble beneath my foot, and slipped into the lotus pond. A moment earlier, I had caught sight of dark blue-black court boots embroidered with cloud patterns, with thick soles and pointed stitched toes, beneath a dark blue court robe and outer coat. It was Wei Lin. In the chill of early spring, with no one else nearby, how could a righteous man ignore a young woman who had fallen into the water and was crying for help? I had investigated him carefully. His family was simple but comfortable, with more than 16 acres of farmland. He was famous for his chivalry. Once he had even bent down and lifted a sick, infected beggar into his arms. A subordinate had warned him. It may be contagious, sir. Be careful. Wei Lin had merely raised one brow. Then before he infects me, why are you not taking my calling card and summoning a physician to cure him? When he said it, freedom and ease shone from his brows and eyes. Sunlight blazed behind him. I had been standing across the street at Baoshan Benevolent Hall, carrying a packet of medicine. The cord tied around it swayed gently, so did my heart. Recently, the Marquis's household had watched me with extreme care. They were selecting a husband for me to strengthen the clan's influence. If I had to marry, then I would choose for myself. Wei Lin was an excellent option. For nearly 2 months, I had arranged matters until I finally left a favorable impression on his widowed mother. One day, her carriage broke down in the road. I stepped down to help her. My conduct was proper, my appearance dignified, and I displayed the full upbringing expected of a noble young lady. Even the birth information I accidentally revealed was judged by a fortune-teller to promise prosperity to my husband and household, a heaven-sent match. Without much effort, I had appealed to his filial devotion and persuaded Wei Lin to come to the Marquis's residence with a marriage proposal. Had my cousin not interfered, what a perfect match it would have been. A marriage said to be ordained by heaven could still be broken by human hands. But a marriage I chose for myself was different. As long as it was not something I rejected, even if 10,000 mountains and ravines blocked the road, I would fight for it at least once. I had understood long ago that if the heart desired something, one had to seek it oneself. Praying to Buddha or seeking guidance from the Tao was useless. The incense before a shrine veiled nothing more than fragile hope, so I remained in the pond. Bubbles rose around me. Water entered my throat, and I coughed until my eyes turned red. My wet clothes clung to my slender figure. Beneath the surface, my legs stood firmly on the pond floor, steady as stone, while above the water I trembled like a flower branch in the wind. I reached toward him. Save me. My eyes glistened as though I were about to cry. I had practiced that expression before a mirror countless times. It looked both natural and alluring. Even I felt sorry for myself. I could not believe any man would remain unmoved, unless Wei Lin was a eunuch. And apparently he was. The evening light filtered through the leaves and spilled lazily across his handsome face. He was neither thin nor heavily built, but tall and well-proportioned. One brow lifted and amusement flickered in his peach blossom eyes. Sunset, lotus pond, a beauty bathing. What refined taste, young lady. Please continue. Damn him. Had the rumors deceived me? Did his sense of justice distinguish between men and women? I deliberately choked on more water. My vision blurred. Tears brought on by coughing slipped from the corners of my eyes. I would finish the performance. My lord, I do not understand what you mean. I do not want to die. Please save me. He rose. A hand as pale as fine jade paused in midair. Then instead of reaching for me, he took out a fragrant red persimmon and began eating it with obvious enjoyment. I grew up in Jiangnan, he said. His meaning was clear. He knew how to swim, and one glance was enough to see that I was standing on the bottom. Finished. My plan had failed before it even began. I had tried to display my skill before an expert. Still, an awkward scheme was useful if it produced the desired result. In about 7 or 8 minutes, a young maid would lead the ladies who were viewing the flowers to this place. The Grand Princess herself was among them. Before everyone arrived, I had to make physical contact with Wei Lin. He would accept responsibility whether he wanted to or not. I absolutely could not marry General Lai. Wei Lin finished his persimmon and turned to leave. Before going, he reminded me, the water is cold. If you do not wish to fall ill, climb out quickly. Fine. In an instant, I blinked away every trace of tears. My face became cool and composed without the slightest embarrassment at having been exposed. I lifted my chin at the most flattering angle and smiled. I simply did not want to break our engagement. Forgive me for amusing you with such a small trick. Since the man I seek has no interest in me, further persistence would only humiliate us both. I will come ashore now. Then I added, please turn away. If you see something you should not, it will be too late to regret it. He paused. A faint ripple seemed to pass through his eyes. After a moment's hesitation, he obeyed. The instant he turned his back, I moved through the water like an eel and reached the foot of the bridge. My heart pounded. Water streamed down my face, and my soaked hair lay across my shoulders. Thinking of what was about to happen, I could not suppress the triumphant curve of my lips. As though sensing something, Wei Lin lowered his gaze. Too late. I seized the hem of his trousers and pulled with all my strength. Caught off guard, he fell straight into the pond. Water splashed everywhere. I slipped close like a fish. My goose-yellow skirt tangled with his dark official robe, pale fabric wrapping around black, and stirring the clear water into confusion. I had dragged a lofty gentleman down into the dust and hardship of the mortal world. Shamelessly, I leaned against him and raised my head with a look of astonishment. I thought you were heartless, my lord. I did not expect you to jump in the moment you saw that I had twisted my ankle. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the maid leading the others toward us. I tightened my arms, my legs already locked around his waist. Unable to push me away, Wei Lin stepped backward. His head was about to strike the rockery, so I instinctively raised one hand to shield him. Pain shot through my palm as it struck the stone. A dark bruise appeared almost at once. My grip loosened and I nearly slipped away. Wei Lin bent down and caught me. In the confusion, my lips brushed his. His entire body went rigid. This time he truly became obedient. For once I had nothing to say. Seriously, why had no one told me earlier that this kind of beauty trap worked? Had I known a kiss would be so effective, I would have kissed him from the start. He carried me ashore. Amid the growing commotion, I hid against his chest, my shoulders trembling, not from cold, but from the laughter I was suppressing because my plan had succeeded. Once we reached the bank, I did only one thing. Wei Lin tried to remove his outer robe and wrap it around me. I stopped him. Instead, I picked up the red fur cloak I had thrown onto the bank and placed it around my shoulders. So warm, so dry, so soft. Elder cousin, you are in terrible trouble now. It truly killed 3 birds with 1 stone. Inside this ancestral hall, the clan uncles were discussing my marriage. Our marriage documents had not yet been returned, and Wei Lin remained a proper match. Our families were compatible. We were a talented man and a beautiful woman. From any angle, it looked like an excellent union. At the very least, the household would not be accused of mistreating an orphaned girl. Only because of my cousin's supposed conflicting fate did the Marquis finally decide to postpone the marriage. Let it be postponed. My eyes curved with satisfaction. Her road to becoming crown princess had already been severed. Elder cousin, you will forgive me, will you not? Just as you once wanted to marry me to a vile horse slave, then held my hand and demanded that I understand your difficulties. Those poisonous calculations could only be hidden in my heart, left to ferment in silence. I lowered my head with obedient humility, exposing the neat whorl at the crown of my head, and bowed to the floor. I will follow the arrangements of the clan uncles. 7 years earlier, both my parents had died. I entered the capital among a crowd of refugees, and accidentally collided with the crown prince's carriage. My pitiful background moved the powerful people present. My father had been a distant relative of the Marquis of Yunyang. Seizing the opportunity, the Marquis adopted me into his household. On the 1st and 15th days of every month, he brought me out to distribute porridge and medicine. Memorials from the censors praised him for benevolence and loyalty. Like heavy snow covering old stains, my presence slowly softened the household's reputation for harshness and tyranny. And the small amounts of silver and gold that accidentally slipped through their fingers were enough for me to live on for a long time. I cooperated perfectly. It was a bargain that benefited us both. I had always hidden my claws well. Over the years, Wei Lin was the only person who had glimpsed even a small part of them. That night was still and cool. A wind lantern flickered, illuminating half of his calm, handsome face. The maids following us remained far behind. A branch caught my foot. I stumbled and instinctively grabbed the front of his robe. Wei Lin turned and asked without haste, "Again? Do you never tire of using the same trick?" "Ah!" I withdrew my hand. This time it truly was an accident. He immediately noticed the important words. This time, only the rustling wind remained in the grove. Soon he would be the person I depended on for a very long time. I softened my voice and offered my terms. It is true that today you saw a livelier side of me than the rumors describe. But you would not lose by marrying me. I counted on my fingers, deliberately showing him the bruised wrist I had injured while shielding him from the rock. I know medicine. I have studied at Baoshan Benevolent Hall for years, and not merely at a shallow level. I can care for your widowed mother very well. I am also skilled with accounts, and managing an inner household would not be difficult. I sighed and made myself look pitiful. I am being forced to choose between you and General Lai. I have no other road. Marrying you is still better than marrying him. My cries for help in the pond were not entirely false. I do not want to die. Then I added generously, if you later meet a woman you truly love, you may take her as a concubine. Until then, Wei Lin had remained gentle, even faintly amused. The moment he heard that, his expression froze. Is that truly what you think? I nodded. He lowered his gaze and remained silent for a moment before replying with cool mockery. As you say, you are indeed the virtuous wife every man dreams of. Shall I also request a memorial arch praising your chastity? Then he turned and left. He even took my wind lantern with him. Was something wrong with him? I groped through the darkness, nearly walked into a tree, and stumbled around for a long time before the maids finally found me. One of them wore 2 new red ribbons in her hair. They were bright, splendid, and far too expensive for a servant. I thought of the red fur cloak and smiled. The day my cousin was removed from consideration, a violent rainstorm swept over the capital. She ran crying from the ancestral hall into the night, because an elder had casually set down a jade ceremonial scepter in another direction. That careless motion transformed her from the Marca of Yunyang's famous, virtuous daughter, admired and sought after by everyone, into a woman scorned by society and blamed by her parents. The selection of a crown princess was too important for the grand princess to be absent. When she saw the brilliant red cloak on my cousin's shoulders, her expression changed at once. Not long before, I had fallen into the water before many witnesses while wearing that very cloak. Wei Lin had held me against him. His hands had touched its lining. My cousin might have been completely innocent. Wei Lin might already have been betrothed to me. Her reputation for virtue might have spread through the capital. Everything might have happened because of an emergency. But the imperial family would never accept a daughter-in-law bearing even the faintest suggestion of impropriety. The grand princess calmly shook her head. The jade ceremonial scepter she had intended to place before my cousin changed direction and landed in the hands of a general's daughter beside her. Were you happy, elder cousin? Did you not want to change the fate described by that wandering soul? Now I had severed it at the root. In the pouring rain, Li Miaoer came to my courtyard. From the window I watched her fall into a puddle. The valuable red cloak was covered in mud and dragged heavily behind her. Unable to rise, she tore it off, hurled it to the ground, and stamped on it again and again. I saw the vicious soul inside her once more. It screamed wildly through her mouth. Why has the story changed? In the book, she was clearly chosen. It is all because of that wretch. She is only an insignificant, illegitimate daughter living on another family's charity. How could she later reside in Cunning Palace and become mother of the realm? She stole your fate and became the heroine. Kill her! Kill her! A pounding sounded at the door. Li Miaoer's eyes were red, her temples soaked, and her hair ornaments crooked. Even the young maid on night duty recoiled in fright. I picked up an umbrella and stepped toward her, imitating her usual voice perfectly. Elder cousin, why are you here? The rain is so heavy, be careful not to catch cold. She shoved me aside. Little by little, she seemed to merge with the foreign soul. Murderous hostility radiated from her. Rain streamed down her anguished face. Her voice sharpened. Qingyi, I have never mistreated you. Why did you scheme against me? The world is already cruel to women. Do you know that after the crown prince rejected me, it will be far harder for me to marry? Even father punished me by confining me and ordering me to copy scriptures. What did I do wrong? I merely cared for you and lent you a cloak. She truly was beautiful. When I first entered the Marquis's residence and walked through its winding corridors, she had come toward me, placed her soft hand on my forehead and smiled. I am your elder sister. Qingyi, from now on this will be your home. Old memories scraped across my heart. I bent down and picked up the fallen umbrella. Rain dripped from my bruised wrist, where a deep ache lingered. So elder cousin also understands that life is difficult for women, and that marriage is vitally important. Then why did you never think of that when you aimed the arrow at me? I spoke slowly. You wanted me out of the capital and did not hesitate to invent a conflict between our fates. You wanted to marry the crown prince, so I had to marry General Lai. I did not like that arrangement, so I fought for myself once. Now the arrow has turned around and struck you between the brows. Yet you still ask me why. What an excellent question. I also want to ask you something. Are you still clear-minded? Do you know what you are doing? I seized her hand, and my shout cut through the rain. You have never once considered me. I do not blame you. But because you once cared for me, I will give you one piece of advice. Those who plot against tigers will eventually be bitten by one. There has never been a fate that cannot be changed. And if fate does exist, then resistance is part of it. Tomorrow will be clear. The peach blossoms at Jiming Temple have opened. We sisters have not gone there together in a long time. Shall we go and see them? There is an eminent monk there who once taught an emperor. He is said to suppress ghosts and summon spirits. I think both of us have questions that need answers. She flung my hand away. The umbrella spun in the air, and rain struck my face hard enough to sting. She lifted her skirt, her expression deathly pale. I do not know what you are talking about. Then she said, Li Qingyi, whatever sisterly affection existed between us ends here. After she left, I bathed again. Steam filled the room. Drowsiness blurred my thoughts. Between sleep and waking, Wei Lin's less than pleasant expression appeared before me. My heart tightened. I was marrying him. What did that have to do with the crown prince? As for the so-called fate described by the foreign soul, I had never cared about it. I had spent years searching for the truth behind an old tragedy, like feeling for a needle at the bottom of the sea. My strength was limited, yet as my wedding day approached, unease followed me like a shadow. Half asleep, I dreamed of the past. Wan Niang of Fengyu Tower. The reason I had thrown myself before the crown prince's carriage, shamelessly remained in the capital, and devoted all my energy to plotting was because I remembered one person. She had been a courtesan, but I should have called her mother. Old years flowed through my dream, carrying me back to Huai'an in Jiangnan. My father Li Zhuang was a notoriously corrupt official, despite his handsome, jade-like face. He had abandoned what was near and traveled from the capital to Jinling, flattering and serving Consort An's youngest brother until he became magistrate of Huai'an County. His servility knew no limit. He did only one good deed in his life. When Wan Niang was thrown outside a brothel to die, he suddenly felt pity. Snow sealed the road that day. The elegant young official bent down, removed the cloak from his shoulders, and placed it over the dying woman. Hidden inside the cloak were 2 round gold ingots. The wretched woman clutched them as though they were the only lifeline in a swamp. That single act cost her the rest of her life. How did I know? Half a year later, masked men in black broke into our residence. They claimed to rob the rich and aid the poor, and said they had hated my father for years. They attacked everyone in the household. My father was beheaded, and the maids were dragged into the inner hall. The gasps and pleas left my eyes bloodshot and their rims red. Father had never taken a principal wife. I was his only daughter born to a concubine. My birth mother had died early. I was never favored, and my courtyard stood in a remote corner. I crawled through a dog hole and ran toward the rear mountain. A bearded man blocked me. His blade was still bloodstained and cold as ice. Just before he struck, Wan Yang arrived. Trembling, she struck him down with a stone. Red blood spattered across her face, making her panic look strangely beautiful. Her legs gave way beneath her. I picked up the stone and struck him once more, then told her we had to hide the body. That night, her soft, trembling body wrapped around me in a haystack, shielding me. The wet, slimy moss on the wall pressed against my shoulders while cold and heat roared through me. Her tears crossed my cheek through the gap in our hiding place. Outside, weapons clashed. Wherever I looked, everything was red as blood. They set the residence ablaze. Again and again, Wan Ning patted my shoulder. Qingyi, do not be afraid. I was not afraid. She was. Later, she carried me on her back and climbed the mountain step by staggering step. She panted so hard that her breath nearly drowned out her whisper. You are his daughter. Even if I die, I will save you. Whether affection was true or false, I could usually tell. But at that time, I did not like Wan Niang. She was too soft-hearted and too blinded by love. Because of 2 gold ingots she had foolishly gambled away half her life. A woman so starved for affection and so lacking in judgment could mistake the faintest glimmer for salvation and sacrifice everything for it. Such a bond seemed too fragile. Perhaps one day she would encounter something better and abandon me. Yet I could not leave her. For all my calculations, I was only 6 years old. My young body could not survive a life of constant flight. I needed her to lead me away. I needed someone to cling to in order to live, so I lied. I told her I had been father's most beloved daughter. Again and again, I encouraged her to repeat her memories until my ears grew numb. Then I dangled a half-real, half-imagined promise before her. Pretending to be innocent, I said, Father mentioned you before. How despicable, how shameless, how filthy. I was exactly like my father. No one doubted a child, and my face looked so guileless. Every time she heard those words, Wan Niang blushed. Her eyes softened, and she twisted the handkerchief in her hands with nervous joy. Did the master truly mention me? Sometimes she hugged me and cried as though her heart were breaking. He was so pure and noble. Heaven has no eyes. How could it let him suffer such a calamity? No. If heaven truly had eyes, he would have met an even worse end. I calmly accepted every kindness Wan Niang gave me. When she earned 3 copper coins, she spent 2 on me and saved 1 for the dowry she hoped to give me someday. I was a greedy locust, thoughtlessly devouring her flesh and blood, because I believed she would eventually abandon me. Before that day came, I had to prepare a retreat for myself. I did not believe in sincerity. Father had spent his life flattering superiors and drowning himself in wine. The servants treated people according to status and were always harsh toward me. I had grown from resentment like a maggot writhing in a jar of salted vegetables. I had never tasted sweetness and did not dare believe it truly existed. My chance to test her came soon. On my 6th birthday, a high fever nearly took my life. I lay curled on a torn mat, drifting in and out of consciousness. I tried everything. I pretended to cry, pleaded, threw a tantrum, and even scratched Wan Niang's wrist until it bled. Do not leave me. Do not think I am a burden. But she peeled my fingers away one by one. Half conscious, I could neither hear her words nor see her panic. My heart held only exhaustion and despair. I hated myself. Why had I not been more careful? Why had I gone into the water to dig lotus roots for her porridge? Why had I fought the children who insulted her? A physician outside the city specialized in severe fevers, but his fee was more than she could earn by embroidering handkerchiefs for 2 years. She would abandon me. I would remember it for the rest of my life. Yet that night she staggered back. Cold clung to her body. Red bloodstains marked the hem of her skirt. Her eyes were full of panic and worry. I remembered how she helped me sit up and carefully blew on the steaming medicine. Her hands still trembled, and the bitter herbal scent circled my nose. Qingyi, my poor ill-fated child. Drink. You will recover after you drink. I remembered even more clearly that she stayed beside my bed for days and nights without sleeping. Where had Wan Niang found the money? We were living in an abandoned hunter's hut on the mountain. Consort Anne's youngest brother, a bloated man obsessed with Taoist practices, believed that the blood of beautiful women could serve as a medicinal catalyst for immortality. For years he had paid large sums to obtain it. A long line formed outside his side gate. Wan Niang stood among them unsteadily. She sat before a rosewood table, her face anxious, and placed her snow-pale wrist upon it. A cut was made, and blood flowed into the bowl until it was full. She caught a servant by the sleeve. I have a child who needs medicine. Her birthday is coming. Please, sir, let me give 1 more bowl. People said a mother's milk was made from blood. I had come into the world with nothing and survived infancy on thin rice paste and gruel. My heart had frozen too early in a landscape of ice and snow. Yet when I was 6 I drank 12 doses of medicine, each bowl mixed with her blood. That was why I should have called her mother. Unfortunately, I had been neither gentle nor obedient. Even in my weakest moment, when I threw myself into her arms crying and coughing, all I said was, Wan Niang, you are so foolish. She smiled like a small golden sunflower, always turning toward the sun. After my 6th birthday, I had a mother. Mother bought me about 5 ounces of sweet, soft milk cakes from the shop at the entrance to Changmen Alley. Their fragrance lingered between my lips and teeth. She did not eat any. She only watched me and smiled. A large pagoda tree stood outside the door. Mother sat on a stone bench studying an embroidery pattern. I grew tired and rested my head on her lap. The new brocade skirt shimmered beautifully in the sunlight. Mother stroked my hair as though soothing a fledgling reluctant to leave its nest. Leaves drifted down. I smiled sweetly, finally beginning to look like a child who could dream of the future. Wan Niang, when I grow up I will buy a small courtyard. Only the 2 of us will live there. I lifted my arms and traced an enormous circle in the air. It must be this big. But that was not what she wanted. She had never given up. I did not know what spell had clouded her mind, but she firmly believed my corrupt father was innocent and had been framed. She wanted to clear his name by any means, reliving the same worn memory again and again. His eyes were so bright that day, his hands were so warm. Qingyi, I was sold into a brothel at 13. What kind of person have I not seen? Villains, cruel men, thugs. He was a good man, only a good man of eyes like his. Those 2 gold ingots let me invite a physician and redeem myself. Without him, there would be no me today. A good man? My father? I had never told Wan Niang what he was truly like. He was a parasite who buried his head in money. A scoundrel obsessed with climbing higher, without half the integrity expected of a scholar. My birth mother died after a miscarriage. Father despised daughters. Before I was even a month old, she had already been forced to try to give him another son. In the end, she did not receive even a proper coffin. When a servant reported her death, father cared only about attending a banquet. Lord Anne's feast cannot be refused, he said indifferently. We will discuss it when I return. No one knew how often I woke from dreams, remembering those indifferent eyes, cold, hard, and unfeeling. I began to hate Wan Niang's blindness in love. Yet I was also afraid. If she ever regained her reason, perhaps I would no longer have a place beside her. She was all I had. Like a thief, I guarded the happiness I believed I had stolen, counting each passing day in fear. Spring became autumn. She treated me better and better. I wanted to spend our small savings on medicine for her scars. She wanted to use it to make me new winter clothes. Her unbound black hair fell over her shoulders. Without powder or rouge, her face was delicate and beautiful. She pinched my cheek and smiled. Winter is coming. Qingyi will be cold. Qingyi is not cold. Had I known what would happen, I would rather have gone without winter clothes all my life. I only wanted to remain beside her and live quietly. This person was my mother. She was gentle, kind, the only warmth I had grasped in a drifting world. Yet our bond was built upon layer after layer of lies, and inside those lies waited an unfinished fate. One day, Wan Niang went into the city. I waited from morning until night, but she did not return. My heart would not stop pounding. I was only 6, small and weak, yet I crossed several mountains alone. Relying on my precise memory, I found my way to the silk shop. Dawn had begun to brighten. I waited for the doors to open and stood in the most conspicuous place. My eyes were wet, my expression harmless and pitiful, and I used every advantage of being a child. Every customer who arrived looked at me several times. Business became impossible. Before long, several workers surrounded me. They coaxed and lied, trying to send me away. From them, I extracted the truth. The previous day, Wan Niang had met an old acquaintance from the brothel by chance. She had always been generous and ignored mocking remarks, so after buying cloth she intended to leave. Then she learned that my father had supposedly once been involved with another woman and had left behind a wooden box. Her lovesick mind awakened again. With someone urging her on, she became convinced the box contained evidence that could clear father's name. She was tricked into returning to the brothel. A poor woman indeed. Everyone knew that Sister Shan had been purchased for the night by second young Master Pei, a vicious man who enjoyed tormenting others. The people at the silk shop said Wan Niang must have gone to take Sister Shan's place. Fate had turned in a circle. Years earlier, second young Master Pei had subjected Wan Niang to brutal abuse and ordered her thrown out of the brothel. A benefactor had saved her, redeemed her, and allowed her to begin again. Now she had returned to the exact point where everything began. She knelt before that man and sold herself once more, crushing the dignity she had painfully recovered. When I found her, she was barely conscious, her body covered in blood. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes torn, her face and body bruised and swollen, and 2 of her fingernails were missing. Yet she still clutched the wooden box to her chest. Weak but unwavering, she smiled with strange peace, as though she had finally caught the sunlight she had chased all her life. I brought it back. Foolish woman. I opened the box. Inside lay only a crumpled scrap of paper bearing 4 characters meaning, a fish eye passed off as a pearl, a fake substituted for the real thing, and a jade pendant with one corner broken away. Wan Niang's blood stained its surface, making it look even more desolate. I did not understand what it meant. Perhaps it was merely a private joke my father had played with a lover, leaving behind a pile of worthless objects that Wan Niang mistook for treasure. She had been deceived, but I could not abandon her. That day I managed to obtain a makeshift stretcher and placed her upon it. She had lost nearly half the blood in her body. I fell again and again, then crawled up again and again. Silent stars filled the sky. Behind me came her broken groans. The rope tying the stretcher to my back felt like a noose around my neck, tightening with every step. I crossed more than half the city, going from one clinic to another. If they told me to kneel, I knelt. I struck my forehead against the floor until dignity and pride no longer mattered. Wan Niang woke once. Her lips moved faintly. Do not do this, Qingyi. You are an official's daughter. The physician at that clinic was especially cold. He ordered his apprentice to drive us away with dirty water. I stood, wiped my face and continued to the next clinic. I did not forget to wound her with my words. This is all thanks to you. What a new experience. Even my father never made me kneel this many times. Wan Niang, when you trampled on yourself, why did you never think of me? I truly loved her gentleness. I truly hated it as well. When I said those words, I felt both cruel satisfaction and unbearable pain. At last Dr. Ma agreed to treat us. I had made inquiries. He once had a daughter who drowned, a few years younger than I was. so I deliberately loosened my hair and let water drip from my body. I raised a pale face and blue lips, striking directly at his compassion. Seeing that I was quick and useful, he kept me as an apprentice. I cleaned up patients' vomit and performed other unpleasant chores in exchange for leftover herbs. Those scraps of medicine saved Wan Niang's life. Only after half a year could she leave her bed. That day, sunset covered the world. Its mercy slipped through the crooked roof tiles and rested upon her shoulders. She sat embroidering a handkerchief. Her damaged, partly missing fingernails curved like a thin crescent on the horizon. We argued fiercely. Her harmlessness was like a bundle of cotton, leaving all the anger in my chest nowhere to land. When we spoke of my father, everything finally erupted. His handwriting? Only you would treat it as treasure. I burned it, Wan Niang. Winter is cold and firewood costs money. But you should not have. Your father left it behind. What if it contained some clue? I cut her off. Enough, Wan Niang. I understand him better than you do. He was a corrupt official. You have read too many stories. Those tales about enduring humiliation, being misunderstood by everyone, then being vindicated years later are inventions meant to deceive fools like you. What hardship did he have? He wanted money and women. When he threw that cloak over you, he may not even have known the 2 gold ingots were inside. He would have taken coins from a dead man's hand if he could. Do you truly think he was good? A slap cracked through the room. The embroidery frame fell to the floor. Tears filled her eyes. Shame and anger warred across her face. Qingyi, who taught you to speak such unfilial words? He was your father. Anyone else may curse him but not you. She struck me. For the first time, she struck me because of a worthless man. My cheek burned and my heart turned painfully sour. At last she softened and tried to comfort me. I shoved her away. Choking back tears, I ran out. Since I could remember, I had endured more beatings than there were stars in the sky. My birth mother died early. My nurse was cruel. Father never trusted me. Whenever anyone accused me, he returned and punished me. The servants followed his example. Yet I had never felt so wronged. The tears would not stop. I ran until I reached a familiar mountain stream. I splashed cold water over my face. When I raised my head, I saw a nest of snakes intertwined on the opposite bank. Red tongues flickered. Vertical pupils stared. Their green bodies gleamed in the last dying sunlight, their pointed heads like messengers from the underworld. At once, I was no longer sad. At Dr. Ma's clinic, I had learned scattered skills and read many illustrated manuals. My memory rarely forgot anything. I recreated a snake-catching basket shown in one of those books. My small body climbed the tree in silence, and with one net I captured the entire nest. Their venomous fangs were another form of me. I hissed along with them and smiled with the joy of someone who never forgot a debt. Even while cleaning up patients' vomit, I had followed every movement of the Pei household. Second young Master Pei, the late-born and overindulged son of an old father, committed every kind of wickedness. At regular intervals, he visited the brothel to indulge his depraved desires. He always returned late at night. Because the matter was shameful and he had to avoid curfew patrols, he took a shortcut. He rested inside his sedan chair, accompanied by only a few servants. That was the best moment to act. Without expression, I rolled up my sleeves. Herbal mixtures painted my arms, shoulders, neck and face with marks resembling the aftermath of mistreatment. I loosened my hair. My dark, grape-like eyes filled with tears. I knew how to use a child's advantages. Then I burst from the alley and slammed into the sedan pole. The chair rocked. The curtain lifted. A violent gaze swept over my head. What unlucky thing is this? Drag her away. 2 days earlier, he had beaten a beggar child who blocked his path to death. When the body was brought to the clinic, not one part was uninjured, and the face could no longer be recognized. One mistake, and that future would become mine. I shook uncontrollably and sobbed. Master, save me. Captain Sun of the Southern City Patrol is my father. He became drunk, struck my mother unconscious, and is chasing me now. He wants to kill me. Please have mercy. Fresh bloodstains on my clothes and swollen bruises on my skin left no room for doubt. He believed me. At the clinic, I rarely spoke or smiled, so everyone called me the mute girl. But my ears listened in every direction. I collected every complaint, sob, groan, and fragment of news. Little by little, those fragments became an invisible blade in my hand, cutting open a path where none existed. I heard his confidant whisper, Captain Sun is not someone to provoke. The brutality on second young Master Pei's face transformed into interest. You are fortunate, he said, then swaggered away. I was fortunate. I had a good father, who beat beggars, courtesans, and ordinary people, and second young Master Pei was fortunate too. His father protected and spoiled him, until he no longer understood that anyone who trampled others should prepare to be repaid. Every time. He simply had to wait for the blade at his throat. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Excitement surged through me. No one noticed that when I rose, I casually touched the sedan twice. Green powder scattered across the sedan in scale-like layers, forming a trail beneath the moonlight. It was a snake-luring herb. Once snakes caught its scent, they remembered it and pursued it in a frenzy. How fortunate he was to encounter someone like me, ruthless, calculating, and willing to use any method. Everything would end that night. What did my father's so-called salvation mean compared with this? I wanted the man who had tormented Wan Niang, branded humiliation into her life, and made her wake crying from dreams to vanish from the world. I was too excited, and too young. When washing my hands, I failed to notice a trace of powder on my cuff. Pleased with myself, I opened the snake basket. The snakes poured out like a dark tide, followed the marked sedan, and formed a river of death beneath the night sky. But I was swept into that river as well. 2 deep punctures appeared on my wrist. Cold venom spread through my body. It felt as though pieces of ice were shifting inside my blood. My limbs stiffened. The wisest thing was to remain still and wait for death. Movement would only hasten the poison and increase the pain. But I refused. I wanted to see Wan Niang one last time and tell her to live well. The man who harmed her and the child who burdened her should disappear together. Then she would no longer have to carry anything. I dragged myself forward. Far away, a small wind lantern appeared. As though my thoughts had summoned her, she had come to find me. My mother was as gentle as lamplight. My mother hurried through the night, weeds caught in the hem of her skirt, scratches across her palms. Her warm amber eyes overflowed with worry. When she saw the wound on my wrist, she burst into tears. Her hot tears fell and burned my heart. This was enough. I could die. I closed my eyes peacefully, smiling. In the haze, warmth pressed against my wrist. I lost consciousness. When I awoke, I was at Dr. Ma's clinic. My hand had been carefully bandaged. Beyond a curtain, Wan Niang lay motionless on a bed. The warmth had nearly left her body. She had stopped breathing long before. That night, in an alley covered with green moss, she had knelt, bent over, and kissed the small wandering soul before her. For the second time, she had brought me back to the human world. She had drawn the poison from me and taken it into herself. Clumsy and desperate, she held me tightly and staggered back toward the clinic. Wan Niang, I do not want you to die. If you wake, I will do anything you ask. Did you not always believe my cursed father had some hidden reason? Wake up and we will investigate together. You still have something so important left undone. How can you die? No matter how I called, she never opened her eyes again. From then on, the world turned and the years changed. She wandered somewhere between the underworld and the mortal world. I stumbled through the mortal world, spending every thought and paying any price to fulfill the obsession she left behind. The men who slaughtered my household that night were eventually declared to be rebellious refugees. All of them died in prison, yet no one claimed their bodies or arranged their funerals. They seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Only their accents revealed that they were from the capital. In all of Huai'an, only Consort Anne's younger brother had the ability to arrange such a thing. Lord Anne. My father had always been his lackey. Had they turned against each other? I began investigating the broken jade pendant. After searching everywhere, I learned only that its jade was commonly found in the capital. I once stole a reference book from a master's home and compared its illustrations. The pendant resembled an object passed down through the imperial family. I could no longer remain in Huai'an. I had to go to the capital. I woke from those old memories to find the Marquis's residence busily preparing my wedding. My cousin had been sent to a country estate. Once the scandal faded, the family planned to bring her back. On the day she left, she stared at me with hatred. Just wait. By then, the soul from another world had completely swallowed the real Li Miaoer. I tactfully urged the lady of the household to invite an eminent monk from the temple to recite scriptures. That night, my cousin deliberately cut her wrist and collapsed into her mother's arms, crying as she complained. What does Qing Yi mean by this? Has she not seen me suffer enough after losing the selection? Every word she says suggests that I am unlucky. If we invite an eminent monk to the residence, will the entire capital not laugh at the Marquis of Yunyang? The Marchioness immediately glared at me with resentment. The idea of inviting a monk had been raised before, but every attempt had gone nowhere. In the end, I was merely someone living under another family's roof. They were Li Miaoer's family. They were not mine. Because the household was busy nursing her injury and arranging her move to the estate, no one paid attention to me. Even the preparation of my dowry was set aside. Only when the Marquis mentioned it casually did the accounts office reluctantly issue a sum of silver and tell me to purchase everything myself. For an unmarried noblewoman, this was a serious humiliation. For me, it was exactly what I wanted. I had already been looking for a reason to leave the residence. I left the maids at the cosmetics shop and went alone to Baoshan Benevolent Hall. For years I had searched everywhere for clues about the broken jade, like looking for a needle in the sea, yet found nothing. The sky was already dark when I left. The Marquis of Yunyang enforced curfew strictly, so I had to return by a route 2 streets longer. Clop, clop. It was not an illusion. Someone was following me. The thick odor of wine mingled with sweat, so foul that my stomach turned. General Lai. How did he know where I was? In an instant, the expensive red ribbons worn by that maid appeared in my mind. Their color was too brilliant and their quality far beyond what a servant should possess. Where had they come from? Only my cousin. Li Miaoer was once again seeking death. I was distracted for only a moment before the heavy figure behind me lunged. He locked an arm around my waist. His damp hand dragged across my cheek. Revulsion and burning pain made me tremble. I wanted to kill him. Had I held a sharp knife, I would have stopped the filthy words, disabled the arm restraining me, and wiped the excited leer from his face. But I held no knife. When my hand rose to pull the sharp hairpin from my hair, my ears suddenly rang. Dizziness flooded my head. My vision blurred, my body trembled on its own, panic, fear, numbness. I froze. The gold hairpin fell with a small clatter. I leaned against a cold black wall, clothing disordered and hair loose. When I looked up, rain had begun again. Drops fell from the eaves like fragments of a broken mirror. Every shard reflected my deathly pale face. As General Lai reached for his belt, I bit my tongue. Pain and the taste of blood pulled me back to myself. My hand found the saber at his waist. I drew it. We struggled desperately in the rain. At last the blade entered his abdomen. My fingers tightened. They trembled more and more violently. A little farther and he would die. Kill him. Every inch of my body screamed the command. But I could not move. The world spun. Darkness closed over my sight. I fell back into the first year after I arrived in the capital. Then I realized the rain was no longer touching my forehead. In reality, I had retreated into a warm embrace. Wei Lin covered me with his cloak. His features were fine, his eyes bright. When he looked down at me, he seemed both like salvation and like mercy itself. He held me while his lips moved. Only the third time did I understand what he was saying. Qingyi, do not be afraid. It is over. He is dead. The scene felt strangely familiar. Wei Lin kept me against his chest and enclosed my hand with his. The strength I could not summon, he supplied. Lending me the strength I could not summon, Wei Lin guided my hand through the fatal thrust that ended General Lai's life. Blood spread across his lower robe, blooming like winter plum blossoms. Wei Lin said calmly, he was a 5th-rank military officer and a trusted man of the Marquis, I know, but his crimes were numerous. Complaints against him already fill the county office outside the capital. Without protection, he would have faced the law long ago. And he made you suffer like this. He lowered his head and gently smoothed my disordered hair. Qing'er, you are trembling. Why? I will handle everything. Why are you still afraid? Only because he belonged to the Marquis's household. The night was too dark, and the rain dragged the light down further. I could not see his expression clearly. I sensed only his movements and words, noble, refined, perceptive, and gentle. Still, the world turned around me. Nausea rose in my throat. The tangled memories choking me finally revealed a single thread, Wei Lin. The first year I entered the capital. At that time, the Marquis's household had not yet taken me in. At the foot of the Son of Heaven, every trade and class gathered. I slipped into the capital among refugees and remained constantly cautious. The An family had never stopped searching for survivors of the massacre in Huai'an. If I investigated there, I would only lose my life. Besides, every vague clue pointed toward the capital. Something I wanted was here. I wandered for days. Then I saw a little girl crouched at the base of a wall. Her cheeks were hollow, her body thin, one leg dragging. 2 older beggars shoved her aside and overturned even the bowl she used to beg. I should not interfere. I could not afford to interfere. But she buried her head against her knees and cried soundlessly. She looked exactly like the child I had once been. After hesitating for a long time, I broke the white steamed bun I had received into 2 pieces and offered her half. When I bent down, the broken jade pendant slipped from my collar. With unexpected strength, she shoved me, snatched the jade, and ran. I chased her through 7 or 8 alleys. The streets grew emptier and emptier. At last she slipped through a doorway I followed. A trafficker hidden behind the door covered my mouth until I lost consciousness, then sold me. When I opened my eyes again, I was inside a brothel that trained young girls. Every memory from that place was stained red. Men in hats and drunken men reeking of sweat filled the rooms. The repeated blows left my back numb and my body unable to move. Within 2 months, my body had developed an involuntary response. The moment I saw such a scene, my legs weakened. It was humiliating. On New Year's Eve, snow fell heavily. I had reached the edge of collapse. Chunfeng House was hung with lanterns and flowers. The grown women, beautiful as ripe summer peaches, wore brilliant red bridal garments. Their eyes smiled, yet also seemed to weep. Below them sat men ranging from boys of 13 or 14 to old men in their 70s and 80s. Gongs sounded rapidly. The women waited to be priced like goods, the future awaiting me. Only cold mockery remained in my eyes. Then sudden chaos erupted. A noble young lord forced his way inside, followed by soldiers and guards. A bamboo fan covered half his face, so I could not see him clearly. But I would never forget his words. My younger sister was taken here. I suspect this establishment is buying and selling innocent people, transporting them toward the western regions, and communicating with enemies beyond the border. The brothel madam smiled and flattered him while the entire building fell into confusion. It was the best chance to escape. I pretended to have stomach pain, used medicine to put the old woman guarding me to sleep, and climbed through a window. Before jumping, I looked back once. The crowd blocked most of the nobleman's figure. From a distance, I saw only a jade-like silhouette, calmly waving a fan amid the bustle of the mortal world. He had cut through the web of fate and released a beautiful butterfly. Much later, I learned that the man was Wei Lin. He had no younger sister. The limping girl I saw that day was not lame at all. Her father used her as bait. He sent her out every day to beg, and if she returned with too little, she was beaten. Before she was old enough to understand, she had become an accomplice. Her mind gradually broke. Sometimes she was behind the threshold and spoke incoherently, begging passing strangers for help. For 2 years, countless people had walked past. Only Wei Lin stopped. He crouched before her, his brows and eyes beautiful, his voice gentle. Patiently, he pieced together the broken sentences of a child. How naive he had been. He listened. He believed. He came. Sensation slowly returned to me. Pressed against Wei Lin's chest in the rain, I watched his long fingers rest near the hilt of his sword. Words jammed in my throat. This. Wei Lin sighed, thinking I was still frightened. Do not be afraid, Ching. You have a husband now. I may not be remarkable, but at least I can protect you to some extent. I heard none of it. My eyes were fixed on the jade set into his sword hilt, an oval of deep green marked by faint cracks. I had traced that shape in my mind day and night until it became instinct. I could not be mistaken. I blurted, "Where did you get that jade?" The question came without context, yet Wei Lin understood immediately. He considered it and answered, "I have carried it since birth." After a pause, he added, "I once joked with Mother and asked why she gave me a broken piece of jade. She said it had been passed down in that condition since our ancestors' time." He too had been born in the river country of Jiangnan. Almost instantly, I became certain that my father had gone south because of him. I had once seen Wei Lin's betrothal document. If I remembered correctly, he came from Tongxi County. Tongxi and Huai'an were connected by waterways and lay less than 30 miles apart. But why? My thoughts remained confused all the way back to the residence. Late that night, my door was flung open. Li Miaoer stormed in. Among noblewomen, a tiny lotus step was fashionable. Each step measured no more than about 4 inches. The waist swayed lightly while the body remained steady, and one walked like a falling lotus petal without making a sound. My cousin, however, strode in with her feet unsteady and knocked over the vase in the corner. "Where is General Lai?" Even common women did not move like this. I lowered my eyes and replied casually, "Elder cousin's question is unreasonable. How could I know the whereabouts of a servant in the residence?" Inwardly, I thought General Lai's body had likely drifted downriver and become food for fish. I took 2 steps forward, leaned close, and smiled. I heard General Lai was involved with an older servant in the household. Since elder cousin is so concerned about him, could that woman belong to your courtyard? Then I covered my mouth in mock shock. That would be terrible. Elder cousin's reputation is already in ruins. If such a scandal spread, how would you live? As though suddenly understanding, I widened my eyes. No wonder you dared to enter your clan sister's bedroom at midnight and demand the whereabouts of a man. Could you be rushing to find General Lai and silence him? Li Miaoer's face flushed scarlet. You are speaking nonsense. Her body shook. She pointed at me, then clenched her hand and lunged to slap me. I avoided her easily. She did not deny my accusation. If the real Li Miaoer's consciousness remained awake, she would have known it was a trap. A properly raised noblewoman would never keep a corrupt servant near her, and the Marchioness supervised the household strictly. Elder cousin. I tilted my body as though the conflict had never happened. A mild smile still rested on my face. Without warning, I pressed her head down against the table. My fingertips moved slowly along her neck. Smooth skin, no seam. It was not a mask. Li Miaoer screamed and flailed. I stood beside the table, drew a flowering branch from the vase and poured the water over her face. Powder and rouge ran away, revealing her features clearly. There was no disguise. In a single night, another soul had taken complete control. Hostility thickened around me. It took a long time to suppress my urge to draw a blade. This foreign soul knew the direction of great events but lacked the simplest knowledge of daily life. What in the world was it? With a wet hand, I patted her cheek. Fear tightened her brows. Her breath came quickly. That expression pleased me. I bent close to her ear and laughed softly. Elder cousin, I dislike the look you gave me just now. It was filled with contempt. Do you despise me because I am an illegitimate daughter? Yet it did not seem that you despised only me. You seemed to despise everyone. Her shoulders trembled. I caught her by the throat, forced her down and warned, do not provoke me again. Now get out. She began muttering madness. As she ran, her overly complicated skirts and ornaments caused her to fall into the mud. Yunchai hurried over to help her. She heard my cousin grind her teeth and whisper, just wait. That fool finally gave me her body. You are only the heroine for a moment, not for an entire lifetime. I still have the crown prince as my final card. Reports reached me quickly. I knew every move she made. When night fell, I stood before the mirror and removed my hairpins, turning her words over in my mind. At the Shangxi purification banquet, the famous scene where you and the crown prince fall in love will belong to me now. The crown prince. I held the gold hairpin in one hand while my long hair fell down my back. A cold, vicious face flashed through my mind. She wanted to marry him and become his empress? If Li Miaoer desired that fortune, she could have it. The Shangxi festival was held at the Grand Princess's country estate beside Kajang Lake. The invitation arrived early that morning. For days, the main courtyard had been busy. The owners of the capital's finest embroidery shops came and went, all leaving with delighted faces after receiving generous rewards. My remote courtyard, naturally, was forgotten. As Yunchai helped me dress, she complained. The eldest young lady only cried before Madame twice after her engagement was cancelled. Yet she managed to remain instead of going to the estate. Now she has even found an excuse to keep Miss Qingyi's wedding goods. What could they possibly be preparing so grandly? I did not care. My cousin had merely been removed from the selection. The crown prince had never actually met her. If he chose her now, would that not be another path opening after every road seemed closed? That cannot happen, can it? Yunchai covered her mouth in surprise. The invitation clearly bears your name. She was not invited. She will go. My expression was unusually gentle. That place is the stage she has longed for. Unfortunately, she will be the clown instead of one of the two main characters. The dangling ornament in my hair swayed. Whether she goes is not for her to decide. It happens that I also have a gift for elder cousin. The carriage stopped at the Grand Princess's estate. Along Qijang Lake, men and women were seated in separate sections. A long corridor divided by flowing water lay between them, yet faces on the opposite side remained visible. Before the banquet began, Wei Lin waved me over. We stood beneath a pavilion and exchanged a few words. You usually dislike occasions like this. It is rare for you to attend. I paused before answering. The Marquis of Yunyang holds a first-rank hereditary military title. By ceremony, the Grand Princess must send an invitation. Perhaps she disliked my cousin and wrote my name instead. An invitation from the Grand Princess cannot be refused. My cheeks puffed slightly. Wei Lin instinctively poked one with his finger. You are lying, he said with complete certainty. Qing'er, you came with another purpose, did you not? I lifted my head and looked directly at him. You speak as though you understand me very well. On what basis? Only then did I notice how beautiful his eyes were, rounded, clear, amber brown, reflecting my figure distinctly, and carrying a smile that seemed to see through every thought. His voice became slightly hoarse. On the basis that we are about to marry. If that is not enough. He lowered his head in thought. Then on the basis that we once killed a man together. Wind swept through the corridor. That day, I wore pale, elegant layers of gauze. They lifted and twined with the hem of his robe. The sight suggested intimacy and harmony far beyond what was proper, nothing more. Wei Lin stepped closer and stroked my head. The peonies at the peony terrace have many thorns. Qing'er should be careful not to be pricked. He meant the Grand Princess was not someone to provoke. If I intended to cause trouble beneath her very eyes, I needed to know when to stop. The current emperor was weak and chronically ill, with few heirs. He had only one elder sister. They had grown up together and shared an incomparable bond. Now part of the court's affairs had been placed temporarily in the Grand Princess's hands. Rumor claimed the banquet was intended to select a secondary consort for the Crown Prince. Wei Lin and I separated. No one paid attention to it. I went to the women's banquet and sat down. A new maid stood behind me. A careful observer would notice her light steps, nearly silent breathing, and the calluses along her fingers. She was a female guard trained through Wei Lin's office. Her martial skill is excellent, he had said. Chinger, keep her beside you for protection. My feelings became complicated. Li Miaoer arrived late. She relied on an old custom. At an imperial purification banquet, noble families were expected to present treasures for the guests' enjoyment. She brought an exquisite carved screen. Before so many eyes, no matter how much the Grand Princess disliked her, she could not accept the gift and immediately drive her away. So Li Miaoer was admitted. Instead of sitting in the front row appropriate to her rank, she walked directly to my side. Her appearance was extravagantly prepared flowered silk, golden sparrow hairpins and layers of expensive ornament. A closer look revealed that the colors of her clothing resembled mine, only richer and more costly. Everyone's eyes turned toward us. She heard the whispers she wanted. The true daughter of the Marquis's household is naturally different. How could a low-born dependent compare? The younger sister cannot match the elder, living on another family's charity, yet imitating them. How embarrassing. I behaved as though I heard nothing. Younger sister. Li Miaoer looked at me with open provocation. From now on, I want everything that belongs to you, fool. For years, I had concentrated on tracing the jade pendant. In the Marquis's residence, I kept a low profile. When Li Miaoer made trouble, I merely responded as needed and never believed I had gone too far. But with General Lai, she had truly enraged me. I smiled. I do not understand, elder cousin. Everything Qingyi owns was granted by the clan uncles. If you want it, take it. That lofty contempt returned to her eyes. Younger sister, you have no idea what you will lose today. After saying that, Li Miaoer suddenly smashed a bowl onto the floor. Everyone turned in shock. Hot soup splashed, reddening the back of her hand. Her eyes reddened as well. Younger sister, I know you resent me, but these clothes did not come from the household treasury. Mother added money from her private stores because the residence has nearly emptied its vaults preparing your dowry. She began to cry loudly. I truly do not understand what still dissatisfies you or why you had to ruin them. Was destroying my future once not enough to calm your anger? Only a short time had passed since she lost the Crown Princess selection. The gazes around us immediately changed. Even the Grand Princess noticed. Remembering the earlier scandal, she frowned and looked at me with clear displeasure. She signaled a matron to summon a medical officer and ordered servants to take Li Miaoer away to change. In the confusion, someone dropped a handkerchief. Its style belonged to a man. No one noticed my cousin's smile deepening. Then it transformed into a cry of alarm. Heavens, could this be? She deliberately stopped halfway, looking terrified and unwilling to continue. Only after everyone questioned her repeatedly did she gather her courage like a frightened rabbit. Is this not one of General Lai's personal belongings? When the guests failed to understand, she explained slowly. General Lai was a low-ranking military servant of our household. A month ago, the family discussed marrying him to my clan sister. But after the incident in the pond between my sister and Lord Wei, that arrangement was cancelled. Coincidentally, General Lai disappeared 3 days ago. Father sent people to search, but no one could find him. She hesitated. And 3 nights ago, my clan sister also returned very late. The hall erupted. The Grand Princess was conservative and cared deeply about propriety. Her gaze toward me turned hostile. Once Li Miaoer finished, sharp breaths sounded all around. How vicious. After the initial shock, people pitied her. The Marquis of Yunyang had kindly taken in an orphaned girl from his clan. Who would have thought he had invited an ungrateful wretch into his home, one who ruined his daughter's selection, behaved improperly with a lowly horse slave, and discarded the man the instant she found someone better? She truly has no standards, someone muttered. They lamented that Li Miaoer had suffered without cause. Her reputation had always been excellent. Then they mentioned my disgraced father, who had long been removed from the clan genealogy. My face remained calm. The disturbance reached the men's banquet across the water. On the raised platform, the Crown Prince looked over. Li Miaoer realized she had his attention and immediately became a frightened, harmless rabbit. Her eyes remained red, yet calculation filled them. She deliberately turned her most beautiful angle toward the opposite shore. The Crown Prince beckoned an attendant, apparently asking who she was. Li Miaoer smiled with satisfaction. Before coming that morning, she had practiced in the mirror countless times. In the book, this was the most important scene. The heroine wore pale clothing and a gourd-shaped coiffure, elegant and otherworldly. Here, the crown prince fell in love at first sight. Something she has not yet obtained cannot be considered hers. The capable deserve the reward. Such a perfect man belongs to me now. A perfect man? The crown prince? I remembered something absurd. When I entered the capital and accidentally struck his carriage, he looked down with eyes dark and violent, like a hungry wolf measuring where to tear into prey. Officials followed the procession, and common people crowded around. He descended from the carriage and pretended to help me stand. His fingertips were cold. A gloomy smile curled at his lips. I thought a stray dog or cat had blocked the road. So it is a beggar. Oh, and a little girl. Where did you come from? Do you have parents or brothers? That sticky gaze felt familiar. Second young Master Pei, the brutal wastrel who later died because of my snakes. From the first moment I met the crown prince, I knew they were the same kind of man. The only difference was that the crown prince held greater power. Before he reached the throne, he still needed to wear a peaceful mask. That made him more dangerous. A maid helped the grand princess descend. After governing for half a year, she carried the authority of someone accustomed to holding a blade. Few dared meet her gaze. I knelt. A long time passed before she allowed me to rise. I have always hated being used as another person's knife. This is a consort selection banquet. You had better not have arranged this. Of course I had. I raised looking genuinely surprised. No, Your Highness, I do not understand what my cousin means. At that moment, Li Miaoer burst into tears. The book had said that one tear from the heroine could make the hero destroy an entire city. Her eyes glistened. Across the corridor, the crown prince's breathing grew heavy. Hiding her delight, she sobbed. Younger sister, are you saying I framed you? I am also a daughter of the Marquis of Yunyang's household. What benefit could I gain? I simply cannot bear to watch you continue down the wrong path. You are already betrothed to Lord Wei. Why remain entangled with another man and stay out until midnight? It is not too late to admit your error. Is Miss Li defending me? A voice cut across hers. Wei Lin. Hearing the disturbance among the women, he had crossed directly into our section to support me. Forgive my discourtesy, Your Highness. He lifted the hem of his court robe and knelt on one knee. This matter concerns me, so I had no choice but to intrude. His gaze swept over everyone present and finally stopped on me. His voice was quiet but unwavering. Qingyi is my future wife. I understand her character better than anyone. I trust her. Wei Lin served as a judicial officer at the Court of Judicial Review. His rank and salary were modest, but he possessed authority to mobilize guards directly. Earlier that year, he had solved several major cases brilliantly and received special permission to attend the Grand Princess's banquet. It was the first time the Grand Princess had seen him at close range. For some reason, she studied him again and again. The entire gathering fell silent, making her voice even clearer. Wei Lin, I know of you. The official preparing the guest list reported your name. You are old enough to know better than to keep kneeling like this. Where is your dignity? She signaled for someone to help him rise. This is a banquet, stand and speak. Then she added, you two are about to marry, are you not? Has a date been set? I have not presided over a wedding in a long time. Everyone stared in surprise. Li Miaoer, unable to read the situation, pursed her lips. Your Highness, are you simply letting Li Qingyi go? Behind Lord Wei's back she had an affair with a horse slave. Enough. The Grand Princess did not raise her voice, yet her authority filled the hall. You call yourself a noble young lady, yet every sentence from your mouth speaks of illicit affairs? Having grown up in the imperial family, she rarely allowed outsiders to read her emotions. But from my position on the floor, I saw her hidden hand trembling inside her sleeve. It had begun after she saw Wei Lin. Why? This was not their first meeting. At the Marquis of Yunyang's residence, she had seen him from a distance before. The only difference was that now he stood close enough for her to see every feature. The Grand Princess accepted a cup of tea and slowly took a sip. What evidence do you have? She addressed Li Miaoer. It is only a handkerchief and no one knows who dropped it. Yet you dare declare that your clan sister was involved with another man and imply she hid him. She lowered her eyes and brushed foam from the tea with the lid. Even if you are the legitimate daughter of a marquis, if you casually slander someone within my residence, I will not spare you. I could read lips. At that moment Li Miaoer lowered her head and ground her teeth. How hateful. Is this the heroine's halo? She did not know that even without the Grand Princess's intervention, I had intended to demand a confrontation. When she looked up, she returned to her fragile manner. I have evidence. My younger sister has a maid named Yunxiang. That night she saw everything with her own eyes. She wiped her tears. If that were not so, how could I suspect my own sister? Yunxiang, the maid wearing red ribbons in her hair, finally arrived. I had been waiting for her to come and destroy herself. Before the banquet, I sent Yunchai away on an errand and brought only Yunxiang. At Li Miaoer's words, Yunxiang dropped to her knees. Oh? I looked at her. You are accusing your mistress of meeting a man in secret? Did you see clearly? Li Miaoer's gaze met Yunxiang's. The maid quickly looked away, her body trembled, and she suddenly burst into tears. Forgive me, my lady, I cannot lie. She struck her forehead against the floor again and again. Your Highness, it is true. I saw it with my own eyes. 10 nights ago, Miss Qingyi slipped out through the side gate and met General Lai in Bluestone Alley. When she returned, her clothes were torn and disordered. The entire gathering erupted. Li Miaoer dabbed at her tears and spoke as though deeply pained. Younger sister, both witness and evidence are here, admit it. You and General Lai were once considered for marriage. I will ask father to arrange the match again and send you far from the capital, where you may live peacefully. What a clumsy little scheme. The Grand Princess is still here, yet elder cousin already intends to decide my fate on her behalf? I smiled and walked leisurely to Yunxiang. Yunxiang, I will ask once more. You personally saw me and General Lai meeting in Bluestone Alley that night? Yes. She did not dare meet my eyes. I worried when Miss Qingyi left the residence, so I followed. Then I saw General Lai leave as well. One went first and the other followed. From the alley came improper sounds. I am only a servant, but I remain unmarried and chaste. I fled without thinking. After midnight, Miss Qingyi returned with her clothing in disorder. Whispers spread. Shameless. I bent down and rested my hand gently on Yunxiang's shoulder. How heartbreaking. My voice remained soft as water. Yunxiang, why did you betray me? 12 days ago, General Lai fell into the river after drinking and drowned. A fisherman recovered his body downstream. It had struck rocks, so his face could no longer be recognized. His remains are still in the county morgue. My smile turned cold. Yet you claim I met him 10 days ago in Bluestone Alley. How strange. If you did not deliberately frame me, then did you see a ghost? Impossible. Li Miaoer was the first to shout. That night General Lai was clearly still alive. How could he have died 12 days ago? Oh! I stepped toward her. Elder cousin knows that? Then I knelt. The magistrate of the capital county is present at today's banquet. Whether my words are true can be settled with a single question. Your Highness, please restore my innocence. The official was summoned. His testimony confirmed everything. Li Miaoer stood frozen, muttering, Impossible. That is impossible, I asked. The current, the night's cold and fish and shrimp feeding on the body could all confuse the estimated time of death. Yunxiang suddenly collapsed. She knew she would not survive this. At a matron's signal, 2 guards entered. Yunxiang struck her head against the floor and turned desperately toward Li Miaoer. Eldest young lady, save me. You gave me 30 taels of silver and ordered me to frame Miss Qingyi. You promised that after it succeeded, you would transfer me to your courtyard. You are falsely accusing me. Li Miaoer went pale and knelt as well. This wretched servant has gone mad and bites everyone around her. Drag her away and beat her to death. She continued to sob and wipe her eyes. But everyone present was experienced enough to understand. My gaze settled on the handkerchief on the floor. I had wondered why, among so many servants in the Marquis's household, the man involved had to be a horse slave, and why elder cousin recognized General Lai's personal handkerchief after only one glance. Every word you spoke invited people to imagine more. I imitated Li Miaoer's expression so perfectly that even the redness around my eyes matched, though mine held unmistakable mockery. Are you trying to pin your own lover on me? You are speaking nonsense. Who could be as shameless as you? Li Miaoer was so furious that she forced restraint and rose before the Grand Princess had spoken. She snatched the handkerchief from the ground and shook it open. Even if General Lai died 12 days ago, that does not prove you had no relationship before. Your name is clearly embroidered on this handkerchief. Her words stopped. Wind lifted the cloth. The stitching was crude, but one character at the corner could be seen plainly. The character Miao from Li Miaoer's given name. Li Miaoer's face lost all color. You wretch! You trapped me! She rushed toward me with hands outstretched. Even so, you did leave the residence that night. You returned at midnight. Who knows what you did? Do you think you are innocent? Enough! Wei Lin caught her raised arm and flung it aside. She fell to the floor. He had reached the end of his patience. How long will you continue slandering her? Qinger was with me that night. From beginning to end, the Grand Princess had said little. She seemed to be observing every movement Wei Lin made and measuring my place in his heart. It was strange, but I had no attention to spare. I copied my cousin again, wiping at imaginary tears. Elder cousin, I never thought you would see me this way. General Lai was a trusted man of the household. When he disappeared, I wished to share the Marquis's burden, so I asked my betrothed at the Court of Judicial Review to investigate. I received the news only today and had not yet reported it to the family. Qingyi's ability is limited. I can do little. I did not expect elder cousin to misunderstand. As Li Miaoer was dragged away, she screamed, "How can a two-faced, vicious person like you be the heroine?" I covered my mouth and laughed softly, pretending not to hear. If this truly were a book, what kind of person should the heroine be? She should decide that herself. When did outsiders earn the right to define her? If a few words could determine or change her, could she still be called the heroine? The Grand Princess was furious. Li Miaoer received 2 strokes with the disciplinary staff and was confined to the ancestral hall for life, forbidden to leave the Marquis's residence. Even the Marquis of Yunyang had to submit a memorial apologizing for failing to discipline his daughter. How could the foreign soul accept that? It had finally coaxed the real Li Miaoer into surrendering her body, only to be forced off the stage the moment it appeared. One path remained before it. I was about to help it take that path. Once the disturbance settled, the guests continued the banquet. No one mentioned what had happened. The Grand Princess proposed a floating cup poetry game beside Guizhang Lake. I deliberately fell behind and whispered to the female guard, "Wei Lin sent you to serve me. Can you draw the guards elsewhere and let Li Miaoer out first?" She nodded. I pressed my sleeve. A small packet lay hidden inside. It contained 5 mineral powder. The drug had a notorious reputation. It caused intense body heat and an uncontrollable urge to shed one's clothing. The Crown Prince always had guards around him, so separating him from them would be difficult. I needed to create an opportunity. Beside Zhang, everyone sat along the water. Small rafts carried wine cups downstream. The Grand Princess paid close attention to me. When the first cup floated to my place, she tested me with questions on ritual and learning, then asked about my recent life. She was clearly examining my character and education. Guests began to wonder, is she being considered as a secondary court for the Crown Prince? But is she not already engaged? Why does Her Highness favor her? I composed a poem. People praised not only my appearance, but also my talent and conduct. Whoever marries this girl will be fortunate. The Grand Princess beckoned me forward. She removed the jade bracelet from her own wrist and placed it on mine. "I hear you will soon marry. Let me add something to your dowry. On the wedding day I will certainly come drink a cup of celebration wine." I thanked her calmly. At that moment the female guard returned and gave me a slight nod, indicating a direction. Under the heated gaze of the guests, I excused myself to change clothes. I left the waterside pavilion, avoided the guards, and followed a narrow path through dense flowers and grass. As expected, rustling sounds came from behind a secluded rockery. A quarter-hour earlier, Li Miaoer had been running with fire in her heart. So what if Li Qingyi was the heroine? Heaven's will was still on Li Miaoer's side. Otherwise, how could an ordinary office worker from another world have entered a novel she had read and become the legitimate daughter of a marquis? The Crown Prince had ranked first for years among the 10 most perfect male leads in women's fiction. Li Qingyi, even if you won this round, you have lost to me completely when it comes to men. The Crown Prince had noticed her. As long as she entered the Eastern Palace first, her modern knowledge of attracting men would secure a place in his heart. The plot had already changed. The woman now destined to become Crown Princess was an unnamed passerby who would die young. Even if fate corrected itself and Li Qingyi married into the palace later, she would be only a concubine. When it came to competing as concubines, everyone began on equal footing. Ambition twisted Li Miaoer's face. Then she heard heavy breathing. She had reached the rockery. Smiling triumphantly, she adjusted her clothes and softened her voice. "Your Highness." Defying heaven, changing fate, turning a supporting character into the heroine, then living a life of power and sweetness. That was the script Li Miaoer deserved. Thank you for sending someone to rescue me and inviting me here. I knew Your Highness believed me. I was wronged. Everything was arranged by that wretch. Please seek justice for me. The Crown Prince's body burned and his thoughts were clouded. He had long relied on 5 mineral powder. I had once smelled the residue on him. He had been forced to abstain after the Emperor nearly discovered the habit. Perhaps the wine at the banquet had weakened his control. Now the old craving returned. Li Miaoer deliberately pressed close to him, and the two soon became intimate behind the rockery. Their voices soon drifted from behind the rockery. A chill ran through me as I listened. I turned to leave and walked straight into a broad chest. Warmth reached me. It was Wei Lin. With 2 or 3 quick movements, he removed the hairpin from my hand and spun it between his fingers. Sunlight flashed along the sharp point at its end. He laughed under his breath and leaned close to my ear. You were bold enough to scheme against the crown prince. Why are you frightened now? My heart jolted. He knew about the 5 mineral powder. How? After dismissing the maid, I had circled near the men's banquet. An Eastern Palace attendant was carrying a tray along the corridor. As I passed him, I deliberately twisted my ankle. He stopped and bowed. My lady, are you injured? In that moment, I rubbed a trace of powder into the wine flask. It had been a tremendous gamble. The dose was small. In someone who had never used the drug, it would cause little more than temporary heat. But if the crown prince drank it, the craving buried inside him would awaken immediately. I had never been certain it would work. Yet everything had gone too smoothly. I lowered my eyes. When I looked up again, my face was peaceful and innocent. I blinked. Wei Lin, what are you talking about? I do not understand. I could never admit it. He came closer and pinned me against the rockery. His dark blue robe filled my vision. On the other side of the stone, the occasional muffled sound made the air even more ambiguous. He lifted his chin, one hand braced beside my shoulder. Qingyi, do you know that everything entering the Eastern Palace is recorded? 5 mineral powder is forbidden. If this is discovered, you will be executed at the public market. Plotting against the crown prince could condemn all 9 branches of your clan. How many heads do you have to lose? He had discovered me. So what? I heard my own voice answer. Then report me, my lord. Wei Lin paused. I raised my head and met his eyes calmly. We are already engaged. Do not forget that you fall within the relatives who would be punished with me. If I die, you will not live either. His eyes were beautiful, reflecting my figure clearly. You believe I came to threaten you? Wei Lin laughed from anger and closed one arm around my shoulders. Apart from the strength in his hand, the position almost resembled an embrace. His breath warmed my neck. Qingyi, so you do remember that we are engaged. He looked down at me. When will you truly regard me as your husband? When will you trust me a little? Wind stirred the crabapple blossoms. Large petals fell around us. Only then did I understand. It was you? I tilted my head, realization dawning. So you helped me. You also removed every trace. My claws withdrew. I moved a little closer and arranged a smile of perfect surprise. My judgment is excellent. I chose such an outstanding husband. Not only capable and clever, but also so willing to indulge me. I could not tell how much was true and how much was performance. But one thing was certain. At that moment, I truly breathed a sigh of relief. The man before me had once saved me from a living nightmare. I did not want even the smallest suspicion to rise between us. Beneath the falling flowers, my waist looked slender and my figure delicate. 2 dimples appeared when I smiled. I tugged at his sleeve again and again, almost coaxingly. The last of his anger faded. You, he sighed. Qingyi, I truly have no way to deal with you. His fingertip touched the corner of my eye. It was slightly rough, and I narrowed my eyes at the sensation. When I lifted my face, I fell into his gentle gaze. I do not ask you to restrain yourself, he said. Nor do I need you to change. Do whatever you wish. He bent closer and smiled. But the next time you attempt something this dangerous, Qing'er, take me with you. Something soft melted at the bottom of my heart. I straightened my clothes and returned to the waterside pavilion. The dancers had already changed twice, and the poetry gathering was ending. Why were you gone so long? Come sit beside me. The Grand Princess beckoned. I chose my words carefully. Your Highness's estate is very large. I lost my way and came upon a strange sight. Beside the rockery stood 2 flowering peach trees growing over one another. Blossoms pressed against blossoms, petals covered petals, and their branches were entwined. Together, they formed a rare twin peach tree. I was so fascinated that I returned late. I added with a smile. Today is the Shangxi festival, when people remove misfortune and seek blessings. Peach branches are said to ward away evil and welcome good fortune. Such abundant twin blossoms must be a rare auspicious sign. It can only be because your Highness's virtue is profound. The omen pleased her. She immediately led everyone toward the rockery. 2 noble young ladies used the crowd to squeeze ahead of me and take my place. I did not mind. I followed quietly at the rear, smiling as I thought of what they were about to see. What is your name? I asked the female guard. Wei Lin had stationed her beside me, yet I had not asked. My name is Jing Shuo. We spoke as we walked. Your skill is good. Where did you learn? Even inside the Grand Princess's residence, you managed to draw the guards away. You handled the matter well. I will ask Wei Lin to reward you. I was born into the household and trained in martial arts from childhood. Perhaps because she knew I would soon marry into the Wei family? Or because Wei Lin had instructed her, she added. When young master was adopted in Tangxi County, a teacher brought me to the Wei household soon afterward. He left money and ordered that I be taught martial arts. The words struck like thunder in a clear sky. A flash tore through the fog of memory, connecting fragments I had never seen clearly before. Tangxi, Huai'an, consort and's biological younger brother, the child. Wind rose without warning, making me sway. My voice became hoarse. Wei Lin is not Madame Wei's biological son? Jing Shuo shook her head. Do you remember the name of the teacher who brought you to the Wei household and left the money? She tried to recall. I only remember that his surname was Li. The world turned. For years I had drifted alone through hidden currents like a small boat, never knowing when I would be swallowed. The truth I had pursued so painfully finally revealed one corner. So that was it. Again it was him. The conclusion was absurd and daring, but there was no time for shock. Everyone had reached the rockery. Chaos erupted ahead, the Grand Princess's furious command, the noblewomen's cries, servants rushing everywhere, and voices shouting for cold water to awaken the Crown Prince. Everything unfolded as I had predicted. Li Miaoer believed that in this age, surrendering her body could purchase whatever she desired. Ridiculous. She did not understand imperial power. The Crown Prince was visibly disoriented and flushed. Anyone with eyes could see something was wrong. Drag away the shameless woman who plotted against the Crown Prince and seduced him. Beat her to death. I had originally intended to use the opportunity to end Li Miaoer's life. One could not raise a tiger and invite disaster. I had allowed her to move freely for too long, but now she knelt on the ground with disordered hair and clothing, still struggling. You cannot treat me this way. I am the daughter of a marquis. The Crown Prince has taken my body. He must take responsibility for me. A sharp slap stopped her. I leaned close and whispered, if you want to live, be silent. I took a cloak from a maid and wrapped it around her, then knelt as well. Your Highness, my cousin is not that kind of woman. There may be a misunderstanding. The Marquis has rendered many military services. Please spare her life for the sake of his loyalty. The Grand Princess sighed. Qingyi, I know you have always been kind. As for the Marquis of Yunyang, she laughed coldly. He raised a daughter like this. It is already mercy that I have not gone to settle accounts with him. Would he dare complain? That was imperial power. Ranks were sharply divided. Beneath it, whether one was a four-generation meritorious noble or a commoner in plain cloth, all were ants. Li Miaoer ground her teeth. While I wrapped the cloak around her, she hissed so softly only I could hear. Kind. My foot, I continued pleading. Your Highness, I have some medical knowledge. Please allow me to examine the Crown Prince before a decision is made. The household physician is on the way, but His Highness's health concerns the foundation of the realm. The Grand Princess had no choice but to nod. I walked to the Crown Prince and observed him carefully. The Emperor's inner palace was not crowded. For many years he had favored only Consort Anne. Besides two disabled princes, the only remaining son was the Crown Prince, born to her. Yet years ago, something had happened between the Emperor and Consort Anne. She had confined herself to the cold palace. Although the Emperor selected new consorts several times, no more princes were born. His own health weakened year by year. I had never seen him. The Crown Prince had narrow eyes and a full round face. He did not resemble the Grand Princess at all. Wei Lin, with his rounder eyes, looked strikingly like her. If the phrase "my father left a fisheye passed off as a pearl" referred to this, then I understood why he had been forced to die. My sleeve shifted. A silver needle slid into my hand. At a concealed angle, I pressed it into the Crown Prince's pulse point. Beneath my fingers, his pulse had been floating, enlarged and chaotic. In an instant it settled into a smooth, even rhythm. I withdrew the silver needle and bowed. Your Highness, the Crown Prince was not given an aphrodisiac. It appears an old illness returned after exhaustion, leaving him temporarily confused. Most people present did not understand. The Grand Princess did. One possibility was that a noblewoman had drugged and seduced the Crown Prince. The other was that the Crown Prince, while mentally impaired, had taken advantage of the legitimate daughter of a marquis. Those were entirely different matters. Li Miaoer kept her life. Her gaze toward me remained poisonous. After the crowd dispersed, she said coldly, "Do not think I will thank you. I am the one chosen by fate. Even without your interference, I would have been safe." I brushed dust from my skirt, still gentle and mild. "What are you saying, elder cousin? You achieved your wish and entered the Eastern Palace. The Grand Princess may have assigned you only the lowest position of attendant concubine, but are you not delighted? Taking her life would have been too simple." True revenge meant stealing everything she desired and letting her fall from the highest place. When she finally looked back, she would discover that what she had exhausted every scheme to obtain was nothing but flowers in a mirror, and the moon reflected on water. She willingly offered herself as food to a monster and tried to please it with her own flesh. When that false bubble burst, what expression would appear on her face? I was very eager to see. After the banquet, I waited for Wei Lin at the side gate so I could send Jing Shuo back to him. All the male guests had left before he appeared. Someone said a palace matron had brushed past him beside the grand princess. I formed my own conclusion. Wei Lin came late. Nothing unusual showed on his face. He offered to escort me back to the residence. We entered the same carriage. After it had traveled some distance, he asked, "Why did you suddenly change your mind?" He meant why I had pleaded for Li Miaoer. "What kind of person am I in your eyes?" I asked. I sighed and accepted the pastry he offered, taking small bites. Must I take her life? Wei Lin watched me eat. Because of my childhood, I finished everything placed in my mouth and never left so much as a crumb. He smiled without realizing it, his mood improving. Like a squirrel. There are many squirrels in the south. They often run into houses. When I was young, I rescued one. At first it fluffed itself up and looked fierce. Once it trusted me, the tiny creature often lay on my shoulder and rubbed against me. Sometimes it even brought pine nuts. It was wild and full of life. After its injury healed, it returned to the forest and never came back. I regretted it for a long time. Now, he thought, he finally had a little squirrel of his own. What kind of comparison is that? I swallowed my pastry, wiped my mouth carefully, and abruptly asked, "Wei Lin, what do you think of the Eastern Palace? What sort of day is this?" He looked surprised. Why did the Grand Princess ask me the same question? I moved closer. How did you answer her? Wei Lin considered. I said that His Highness is simple by nature, just as a benevolent heir in ancient times ultimately lost his life because of excessive benevolence. Your Highness's actions today may have been a strategy balancing gains and losses. Even so, the Crown Prince still carries the bearing expected of an heir to the throne. I smiled. When people judged Sima Zhong, the famously incapable Crown Prince of Jin, they also called him innocent by nature. It sounded like praise, but was really condemnation. And the benevolent heir Wei Lin mentioned had been falsely accused and killed. He was borrowing history to imply that the current Crown Prince lacked virtue despite sitting firmly in this Eastern Palace. I teased him. Wei Lin, I once studied physiognomy. You have the appearance of a dragon and phoenix. If one day you ascend a high platform, will you become someone like the Crown Prince? The words were treasonous. Court affairs could not be discussed carelessly. Wei Lin did not stop me. He listened gently to the end. Perhaps he truly believed it was only the joke of a sheltered young woman, a bride hoping her future husband would rise to honor. So he shifted the topic. Become what kind of man? A man with an enormous harem, who attends one banquet and returns with another concubine, romantic entanglements everywhere and never a peaceful day. He looked at me intently. No. His voice was slightly hoarse, smooth as the finest silk brushing the ear, yet carrying warmth enough to burn the heart. Qingyi, of all the waters in the world I need only one cup, and of all women only you. I began investigating events from many years before. The clues formed a tangled web without a clear beginning. The imperial family had declined over time. Apart from the Crown Prince and Grand Princess, its members rarely appeared before the world. Consort Anne had hidden herself for years. Stories about her among the people belonged to the distant past. She had once been the capital's greatest beauty. A portrait of her was said to be worth 1,000 gold pieces. After she entered the palace, however, everything related to her was destroyed. Anyone who secretly preserved an image could be punished without pardon. The emperor was like a wicked dragon guarding treasure. He locked the woman he loved inside a golden cage. Meanwhile, Baoshan Benevolent Hall had taken root in the capital. Every bit of silver I saved from the marquis's residence went into it. Over the years it spread silently through every corner like spring rain soaking the earth. Street gossip, market chatter, and fragments of conversation inside noble residences wove into a dense net and continuously carried news back to me. But Baoshan Hall dealt mostly with common people. Imperial secrets remained far beyond its reach. Wei Lin sent me a wild goose with a golden beak and black wings. It flapped inside a cage. The breed was rare in the capital. I approached and poured water into its dish. Honk honk. Lost in thought, I failed to notice the water overflowing. The goose thrust out its red beak and pecked my hand in protest. At that moment, a worker from Baoshan Hall arrived with a coded prescription. The densely written names of herbs concealed a message. Another group was also investigating the old Anne household case. They had acted one step sooner, located an elderly matron before us and moved her to a hidden alley. Does the owner wish to meet her? I knew almost at once that the other investigators served the Grand Princess. Her power reached the sky and she lacked no talent, but her commands passed through layer after layer of subordinates. No matter how influential she was, she did not understand the capital's lowest streets and trades as well as I did. I tore the paper apart and fed it into my hand warmer until it became ash. Thin smoke blurred my brows. Meet her. The matron was someone I had seen before. On the 1st and 15th days of every month, Baoshan Hall distributed free medicine. Poor families from the surrounding streets came for help. I vaguely remembered an old woman led there by a beggar girl. Her hair was white, her clothing torn. When she opened her mouth, the root of her tongue was dark purple. The rest had been cut away. One eye was missing. The other was covered by a frightening white film. Without the kindness shown to her on the day we gave medicine, she would never have followed Baoshan Hall's people willingly. Blind in one eye and without a tongue, how could she tell me the truth? In the hidden room, the shopkeeper spent half a day attempting to communicate with her, but nothing worked. Then she heard my voice and turned, her remaining eye fixed on me. "You can still see a little, can you not?" The room was dark. I lit a candle. She instinctively raised a hand to shield her eye. Realizing I had understood, she nodded hard. Paper and brush had been prepared. She pushed the sheet toward me. A single crooked character meaning a plea had been written upon it. Only then did I see that her right arm hung uselessly, completely withered like dry wood. Her 5 fingers curled like claws. Writing even one stroke was extraordinarily difficult. "You want me to take in the beggar girl and give her food, clothing, and a future?" The matron made a hoarse sound that seemed to mean yes. 3 years earlier, she had wandered into that street. No one knew her origin. Everyone called her the old beggar woman. She was old, no longer beautiful, disabled, and seemingly destined to die. That winter, a great snowstorm covered the capital. She curled against a wall. 372 people passed without stopping. Only a beggar girl picked her up and brought her home. From then on, whenever the girl received a steamed bun, she broke it in half and shared it with the old woman. She washed her, changed her clothes, patched garments, and begged for a pad coat. Though often hungry, the old woman spent her last years surrounded by a little kindness and human decency. In despair, people could still be moved by gentle kindness. It was the light of humanity. Wan Yang had given it to me. The beggar girl had given it to the matron. When investigators finally found her, she knew her road had reached its end. Death did not frighten her. If her life could purchase a future for the child, she would die 10,000 times. I had treated that child before. She trusted me more than she trusted the Grand Princess. I placed the broken jade pendant before her. The matron's expression changed violently. She bent painfully over the table and began writing. Candlelight illuminated her twisted body. Her deformed wrist trembled, covered in old scars from unknown instruments. Each stroke cost her great effort. 37 years ago, Consort Anne and Prince Yu were childhood sweethearts. Word by word, the curtain over the past began to lift. The current emperor had not ascended as crown prince. At the time, he was only Prince Yu, an unfavored imperial son. He had 2 people beside him. One was his elder sister, sent away in a political marriage, who devoted herself to clearing his road to power. The other was the daughter of a great general, his childhood companion An Yongyu, now Consort An. With blade and spear, the An family fought 7 campaigns against the northern tribes. Supported by them, the former crown prince was deposed, and Prince Yu's name resounded beneath heaven. When the late emperor fell gravely ill, Prince Yu ascended the throne, as though everything followed naturally. He brought his elder sister back to the capital. After so many years of affection, An Yongyu was willing to manage the inner palace before an empress was chosen. She was also willing to persuade her father and brothers to surrender their military authority and live as wealthy, idle nobles. Under the red wedding curtains, the emperor had once whispered beside her ear, "Yongyu, you know that you are the only one in my heart." She truly was the only woman in his heart. When she acted against 2 other consorts, he tolerated it. What she did not know was that he desired something even more strongly: the complete destruction of the An family. Their achievements overshadowed the throne. The title Duke Defender of the Realm, the existence of the An family army, everything had become an offense to his eyes. The matron clenched her fist and paused for a long time. The ink on the paper seemed like blood from the past, flowing without end. Colluding with the enemy and betraying the state. Consort Anne was 8 months pregnant when the accusation entered the palace. The news struck like thunder and was merciless beyond measure. All 370 members of the Anne household were implicated. Not one survived. At the public market, one group after another was executed. Those who submitted memorials begging for mercy were imprisoned until the cells overflowed. He was a general. How could you let him die under the name of a traitor? The emperor still loved Consort Anne. The news was sealed tightly, but her temperament had always been fierce. Consort she once suppressed seized the chance to retaliate. At last she learned the truth. Rain fell heavily that day. Holding her pregnant belly, she stormed into the imperial hall. Every cry sounded torn from blood. Her voice had become hoarse. You cannot treat me this way. You cannot. Have you forgotten? My brother was once your study companion. My father taught you to ride and shoot. When everyone looked down on you, they stood beside you. There was no answer. She cried until no sound remained. Her hair was disordered. In despair, she rushed toward a pillar. Very well. You wanted every member of the Yin family dead. Do not forget that you are also a son-in-law of the Yin family. I cannot harm you. Then I will take this sinful child in my belly and wait for you in the underworld. Young Yu. Perhaps the emperor still loved her. Perhaps he simply had few heirs and could not bear to lose the child. She was rescued, but the shock threatened the pregnancy. She no longer wished to live, and both mother and child were in danger. Basin after basin of bloodied water was carried from the chamber. Midwives trembled as they shouted, "Your Highness, open your eyes. You must hold on, Yongyu." At last the emperor yielded. His voice softened. I remember that you still have a younger brother who was adopted into a collateral branch. Give birth to this child and he will live. That child was the present crown prince. After giving birth, Consort An did not rest. She did not look at the infant even once. Instead, she opened a wooden chest and removed a lotus-pink dancing dress. Once, long before they had met for the first time, she was the beloved daughter of a great general, skilled in both letters and martial arts. She had never ranked behind anyone in any subject, except dance. In dance she always placed last. She refused to accept defeat. One moonlit night beneath a parasol tree she practiced alone. The lotus-pink silk dress floated in the wind. She misstepped. The small cry, she fell from a tree branch. Instead of striking the ground, she landed in the warm, slender arms of a young man. Her face went pale. She stared up at him stubbornly. My father will reward you. The young man laughed and gently removed a leaf caught near her temple. Under the moonlight, beneath the parasol tree, I thought I saw a phoenix dancing and lost my senses. My conduct was improper. With one glance, he recognized her. Missin, I am a friend of your elder brother. Before that night, she learned dance only to defeat her classmates at the women's academy. Afterward, she wanted to dance for one person alone. Even her teacher said she improved with astonishing speed. Her dance had gained a soul, a spirit filled with radiant joy. She had not danced in a very long time. Had so many years truly passed? Before her mirror, Consort N silently dressed herself. She drew her brows, applied a forehead ornament and colored her lips. She remained beautiful, but her eyes had gone still. The brilliance of her youth was gone. Pregnancy had left faint discoloration across her skin. A familiar melody began. The moon that night resembled the moon of the past, yet did not. Lotus-pink silk turned in the air. She was no longer as light as before and could not dance upon tree branches. Yet at her fingertips bloomed a sorrowful flowers. Each step swayed, each step opened. It carried the final flame of a life and the sigh of a soul. Led by palace servants, the emperor arrived and watched in silence. When the dance ended, Consort An turned and stopped before him. A cup of wine slipped from her long sleeve. She raised it, took a small sip, and a faint flush colored her cheeks. Your Majesty. She looked up. This cup is offered to Prince Yu and Anyang Yu of the past. After that night, Consort An confined herself to the cold palace and never stepped outside again. The emperor never had another child. His health declined into years of serious illness. The shopkeeper covered her mouth in shock. So the entire household of the Duke Defender of the Realm did not die on the battlefield. They died like this? Power truly is terrifying. The events had happened only a little more than 10 years earlier. Yet black and white had been reversed so completely that not even a whisper reached common people. Perhaps 100 years later, history would record the blood debt. What use would that be to those who had lived through it? I silently finished reading. My fingertip traced the broken jade, then I looked down at the matron. This is only the first half of the story. With enough effort, much of it can be discovered. Matron, what I want is the second half, the half only you know. Her writing hand trembled. I added at exactly the right moment. For example, a fisheye passed off as a pearl, the exchanged crown prince. Night wind entered through the gap in the window. The candle flame swayed. The brush fell from her hand. She fumbled to retrieve it, moving with painful difficulty. I bent first, picked it up and returned it to her. Wealth, honor, the flattery of crowds, the splendor of the palace. Matron, if I am correct, you once possessed all of those. Then you should be more sensitive than ordinary people. You should smell danger and opportunity. Some truths have been buried too long. It is time they saw daylight. Her body continued to tremble. She sat like a statue. A long time passed before she turned toward me, opened her mouth and pointed to the severed root of her tongue. You cut it yourself? She nodded. Memory carried her back. One moment, she had been a powerful senior matron, nurse to the favored consort. That position allowed her to command the other servants. Few dared refuse her. The next moment everything had become the cold palace, dark and desolate. Torn silk shifted like strips of human skin. Brocade worth 1,000 gold pieces was crushed beneath trembling hands. A pearl on the toe of a shoe still swayed. She had seen everything. Nurse, a woman sighed. Perhaps she spoke to herself. Perhaps she asked the matron, "What should I do with you?" The matron had prostrated herself, striking her head against the floor and begging for mercy. She swore her loyalty again and again. In her clouded eyes, the child she had raised now held a dagger. One cut severed the tendons in her hand. Another slashed her face. The same peerless face looked down at her, but madness and cruelty had replaced its former light. "It is all your fault. If you had accompanied me that night, I would never have met him. If I had never met him, my father and brothers would not have died. None of this would have happened." Consort Anne had nearly lost her reason. "Your Highness, spare me." The matron gasped, barely able to form words. "The heir's young son will one day possess the realm. Your Highness, you will have your revenge." She looked at the dagger in Consort Anne's hand. "As for this secret, besides the dead, there are also the mute. They cannot speak." She cut her own tongue. Blood struck Consort Anne's face. The consort laughed. Lightning split the sky and illuminated her expression. She wiped the blood away and bent to help the dying matron rise. "Oh nurse, I was only teasing you. Was there any need to go this far?" She smiled sweetly, like the proud, brilliant girl she had once been. "How could I truly kill you? Few members of the Yin family remain. Every life is precious." But the matron no longer believed her. She trembled before the madwoman as though facing a demon. Only 2 months earlier, on the day of the birth, Consort Anne had killed her own newborn child. She wound the cord around it again and again while laughing. "Child, blame your mother for judging the wrong man. Your father is a beast. Such filthy blood is unworthy of flowing inside me. It is better for you to die." The infant had been strong and healthy. Its cries filled the room. Consort Anne did not seem to hear. Her face flushed as her laughter grew more frantic. "Death is better. Death is better. Once you are gone, you can make way for your elder cousin. He is the only orphaned son left by my eldest brother. The blood of the Yin family is nobler than imperial blood." She laughed wildly. "The emperor can no longer father children. Be a good child and yield the road to your brother. This realm should have belonged to the Yin family." That surviving child was Wei Lin. He was supposed to be abandoned among the dead. Afterward, Consort Anne silenced every palace servant who had witnessed the birth. The matron was left maimed and discarded. But that night my father, Li Zhuang, happened to pass nearby. He had entered service through the Imperial Forest Guards and was responsible for palace security. During his patrol, he heard a faint infant cry and became suspicious. He rescued the child. There had been no proof of the baby's identity, but in a moment of softness, the matron had picked up the broken jade token that once represented the engagement between Consort Anne and the emperor. She tucked it into the swaddling cloth beside the infant. "In my hometown," she wrote, "there is a custom. If a child who dies young is buried with an object belonging to its parents, its resentment will disperse and it may be reborn sooner." That single act of compassion allowed my father to determine the child's true identity. But exchanging an imperial prince and disturbing the succession could doom all 9 branches of the clan. Without absolute evidence, father did not dare gamble with the lives of his entire clan. And once the truth emerged, the An family's retaliation would be mad and merciless. Even the emperor's only healthy son might not survive, so father resigned. His clan erased his name. He carried the child south to Jiangnan and went to the home of Consort Anne's younger brother, hoping to uncover the entire truth. I nearly lost my balance. "So he truly..." I covered my face and laughed softly. "Wan Yang was right? She was right. My father truly had been an honest official. To infiltrate corrupt officials, he needed large amounts of silver for bribes, yet he refused to squeeze it from the people. All the abacus beads I had heard since childhood had been counted for that purpose." I laughed until a tear slipped between my fingers and fell near the candle flame. But something did not fit. If my household was destroyed because of Wei Lin, why was he still alive? Why had he safely passed the examinations and moved his family to the capital several years earlier? Father must have discovered something else. What? I parted from the shopkeeper at the crossroads. It was the 15th night of the month. There was no curfew, but common people feared the nobles living along the road before the Marquis's residence. Only a few stalls remained open. As I walked, I suddenly felt as though I had returned to Huai'an years ago. During one mid-autumn festival, father took me to view lanterns, the only time he ever did. He was so miserly that he bargained over 2 copper coins with the seller. I puffed my cheeks in anger. Looking around, I saw a graceful young woman behind the stall secretly watching my father and me. Her cheeks slowly reddened. "Wan Yang. So we had met that early." For a moment, memory blurred the street before me. Crash! A blade flashed in the night. I twisted aside by instinct, but it cut my arm. Blood ran down my sleeve. I collided with a roadside stall. Fish-shaped lanterns tumbled across the ground. A group of masked attackers in black appeared. Who sent you? I forced myself to remain calm. With my back against the stall, I searched through the confusion and found a kettle of boiling water. I swayed for only a moment, then seized the handle and threw the water forward. The street erupted. I ran headlong into the crowded market and changed my voice to shout, "Assassins! Someone is killing people!" The sight of Wei Lin's blood spread panic quickly. "Someone has attacked a woman. Report it to the authorities. Help! Too fast!" One moment I had learned the truth from the matron. The next, killers were on my heels. Was it Lord Anne? No, my expression turned cold. I had lived safely in the capital for years under the identity of a distant clan niece. If he wanted to kill me, he should have acted long ago. Besides, the shopkeeper had hidden the matron elsewhere. These attackers were numerous but poorly trained. They resembled rough thugs gathered in haste. Every one of them focused only on me. A hateful face appeared in my mind. Only my cousin had constantly watched my movements. Still refusing to surrender, elder cousin? Then this would be your final pleasant dream. 2 roads opened ahead. The left led through several streets to the busy market and the 5-city military office. The right left the residential district and ended in a dead alley. Early summer wind struck my face. With every running step, more blood flowed from my arm. The sharp scent filled my nose. My hair ornaments rang and reflected fragments of light. Without hesitation, I lifted my skirt and ran right. I behaved as though panic had made me lose all sense of direction. My pace slowed. My breathing grew heavy. At last, I leaned against a moss-covered wall, my face pale. "What is this run? Why have you stopped?" There had been dozens of attackers. 2 were restrained in the market. Several others lost the trail. Their leader had been badly burned by my boiling water and had no intention of letting me go. He covered one eye and approached step by step. "Damn woman, you can run." He looked me over. "And you are pretty. Perhaps the brothers should enjoy themselves before we finish this." Closer. The distance narrowed. The full moon hung like a silver plate, radiant and merciful above the human world. I lowered my head, hiding my expression. In my eyes shone the light of someone gambling everything. When I raised my face, moonlight filled tearful eyes. I spoke weakly and desperately. "Who sent you? Why?" I have finally learned the truth of that year. I know Wei Lin's real identity. I even have evidence. And yet I will die here. Heaven truly has no eyes. I cannot accept it. What truth? The leader stood before me. He muttered, "What nonsense is this woman babbling? Has fear made her stupid?" A scream suddenly tore through the night. The 20th day of the 4th lunar month was the auspicious date selected by the Imperial Astronomical Bureau. It was also the day the Crown Prince married his principal consort. The daughter of the great general's household was appointed Crown Princess. When she descended from the bridal carriage, a red veil concealed her face, but her body looked unusually tall and broad, even taller than the Crown Prince. My cousin had evidently whispered enough sweetness into his ear. As a concubine, she was allowed to enter the Eastern Palace on the same day. The Eastern Palace was filled with celebration. The wedding procession began at Vermilion Bird Gate, and 3 long streets were covered in red. Attendants scattered wedding money. Children squeezed through the crowd to collect it. Military officers cleared the road while the bridal carriages advanced. Li Miaoer sat surrounded like the moon among stars. Although the matchmaker repeatedly warned her, she lifted the curtain. Wherever the carriage passed, people bowed and knelt. A lofty thrill filled her. How wonderful. In the modern world, others had always ordered and scolded her. Being above everyone in an ancient age was far more satisfying. Then, among the crowd, she met a pair of bloodshot eyes. Through the thin carriage curtain, the man seemed to stare into her soul. His gaze held murderous fury. Li Miaoer flinched and dropped the curtain. Why was he here? A miserable minor official, Wei Lin. 3 days earlier, he had lost every trace of Li Qingyi. Day and night, he led the Court of Judicial Review's guards through the capital, nearly turning the city upside down. He stood on the edge of madness. The previous day, he had even stormed toward the Marquis's residence. Had the servants not stopped him, he might have forced his way into her private courtyard. A lowly clerk who did not even appear in the original novel. Where had he found such courage? Anger blazed through Li Miaoer. She crushed the handkerchief in her fist. Just wait. Once she became crown princess and gave birth to an imperial grandson, she would still did not know, did he? His betrothed, Li Qingyi, had probably been ruined beyond recovery. Her body lost where no one would ever find it. How pitiful. She refused to admit that his gaze had frightened her. It felt as though something was slipping beyond her control, as though she were about to lose the most important thing. A baseless unease crept into her heart. It had to be an illusion. The heroine is dead. The crown prince is about to marry me. She lifted her chin. A ruby-studded dangling hairpin burned in her hair like blood. Covering her mouth, she giggled. Everything is unfolding exactly as I planned. This is the life that should have belonged to me. She sighed with satisfaction. Everything had gone so smoothly that even heaven seemed to help her. After the crown princess descended, her unusual height made her appear awkward and shy. Several times, she refused the crown prince's hand. Li Miaoer immediately stepped forward to replace her. Elder sister will not be angry, will she? So many guests are watching. For the Eastern Palace's dignity, I can only overstep a little. The crown princess's large figure seemed lonely. She trembled and shook her head. Li Miaoer smiled. The crown prince, however, noticed something strange. Why do these patrol guards look unfamiliar? I have never seen them before. Before he finished, Li Miaoer interrupted. Eagerly, she took the red ceremonial ribbon and shook it coquettishly. Your Highness is a man above ordinary people. How could you remember every servant's face? Besides, the Grand Princess arranged everything personally. Who would dare cause trouble here? She called sweetly. It is time for the ceremony. Elder sister is unwell and already agreed that I would stand in for her. Step by step, Li Miaoer climbed the platform. A gilded bronze incense burner reflected her beautiful face. She stared at it as her smile slowly deepened. After the bows were completed, she was supposed to drink the ceremonial wine with the crown prince. But the master of ceremonies did not call for her to rise. Li Miaoer looked up in confusion. The official was gone. The Grand Princess stood in that place wearing magnificent court robes, dignified and imposing. Her fingers moved slowly over the wine jar. Instead of filling the bridal cups, she poured the wine onto the ground. This ceremony is reserved for the true Eastern Palace. Li Miaoer froze. She thought the Grand Princess was criticizing her for overstepping, her mind still trapped in competition between women. Is your Highness blaming me? I did not intend to steal the Crown Princess's place. She offered it herself. Please consider the greater situation and do not embarrass the Crown Prince before the guests. Even the Grand Princess was speechless. She ignored Li Miaoer and turned toward everyone. She raised her voice. I say this because the Crown Prince is not the Crown Prince. My imperial brother is gravely ill. I have no child of my own. I cannot watch the realm of the Li family be thrown into disorder by outsiders while the court collapses. Every word was understandable. Together, they sounded like an incomprehensible riddle. Li Miaoer's smile stiffened. What did it mean? How could the Crown Prince not be the Crown Prince? The Grand Princess had prepared for this day for a long time. At that moment, the Crown Princess lifted the red bridal veil, revealing a handsome, heroic male face. He tore off the wedding dress. Everyone stared in shock. The heir of the great general's household had taken his sister's place in the bridal carriage. He knelt and recounted an old story. Years ago, his father had shared a close friendship with the Duke Defender of the realm. Once, after drinking, the Duke complained that his eldest son had been reckless enough to make a brothel woman pregnant. The household fell into chaos, and his daughter-in-law repeatedly demanded separation. In the end, the family sent the woman far away. Soon afterward, disaster struck the Duke Defender's household, and the entire family was implicated. The general's heir reached inside the front of his robe, the reason it had appeared unusually bulky, and unfolded a portrait. He slowly unfolded a portrait. It showed a woman. She bore a striking resemblance to the man standing as Crown Prince on the platform. Their brows and eyes seemed carved from the same mold. My family knew little, the heir said. Out of loyalty to an old friend, my father wanted to preserve one trace of the An bloodline. He secretly sent men to search for that woman, but they arrived too late. Only a grave remained at the entrance to her village. Not long before, a group of strangers had entered the village. Their voices and dress resembled palace eunuchs. My father only managed to have the woman's likeness drawn. When he returned from the county seat, the entire village was burning. More than 300 households were wiped out in the fire. Until now, my father never understood why. Consort Anne exchanged her elder brother's son with her own child, and she destroyed witnesses to keep the secret. The gathering exploded. The Crown Prince sprang up, his face red. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. You dare slander me. I will have all 3 branches of your clan condemned. A brutal and ignorant man like this could not become the ruler of a country. Consort Anne's story inspired sorrow, but the child she selected had been spoiled until he rotted at the root. The peace of the common people and the stability of the realm could not be gambled upon her revenge. The portrait was not the only evidence. One piece after another appeared. Once the answer was known, tracing the causes backward became far easier. At last, even the crown prince fell silent. Enough! He covered his ears. I will not listen. I am the true dragon and son of heaven. You are deceiving me. His gaze swept over everyone. Slowly, he drew his sword, the point aimed at the grand princess. His eyes reddened with hatred. Aunt, you invented all of this to deceive me, did you not? He laughed. You want to become emperor? Unfortunately, when you were sent away in marriage, your body was injured. You can never have a child. Even if the realm is given to you, can you hold it? Absurd. The grand princess hurled her wine cup to the ground. It was a signal. The unfamiliar patrol guards advanced from both sides of the corridor. Cold armor flooded the courtyard. Seize this remnant of the rebels! Weapons left their sheaths together, flashing across the hall. The scene descended into chaos. The crown prince had held his position for more than 20 years and possessed loyal followers. The imperial forest guards under his command resisted desperately. They were quickly declared rebels. The struggle for power was terrifying. Many people died and the courtyard became a river of blood. The grand princess had seized the initiative. The crown prince's defeat was inevitable. Your Highness, flee. As long as you survive, there will still be a chance to recover. The wounded commander of the Imperial Forest Guards fought desperately to protect him. Because the opposing side deliberately left a gap, the crown prince quickly approached an exit. As he was about to escape, an unknown soldier kicked Li Miaoer, who had curled among the fallen like a quail. Do not kill me. Her face changed with terror. Raising both hands, she caught sight of the fleeing crown prince. Your Highness! She rushed forward and wrapped both arms around his leg. Tears and mucus covered her face. I am already your woman. We bowed to heaven and earth and completed the marriage rites. You cannot abandon me. The crown prince kicked her away. Pain whitened her face, but she clung to his ankle. Take me with you. If you leave me here, I will die. The grand princess glanced subtly toward a corner. Her eyes narrowed, exchanging a signal with someone unseen. Then she accepted a bow, set an arrow and released it. The arrow flew toward the crown prince. In that critical instant, he did not hesitate. He seized Li Miaoer and used her as a shield. The arrow pierced her chest, and she collapsed to her knees, unable to speak. Through a field of red, she saw the crown prince turn away without even wiping his hands. How could this be? He was not the right man. Everything had been wrong from the beginning. In her final view, a young woman with clear, delicate features stepped from an unnoticed corner. Her gaze passed over the blood and stopped before Li Miaoer. You! Li Miaoer widened her eyes. Li Qingyi, you arranged all of this. I drew a dagger from my sleeve. You deserve to die. But the words I wished to speak next were for the real Li Miaoer, my true elder cousin, so you knew all along. The foreign soul suddenly raised its head, pulled at the hairpin in its hair, and charged toward me with a scream. Even at death's edge, it wanted to drag me down with it. Why? Why are you the heroine? My dagger struck her throat and stopped her charge. I saw the muscles of Li Miaoer's face twitch. Terror and madness broke apart. Then a layer of confusion and gentleness appeared, an expression completely unlike the foreign soul. I kept hold of the wooden hilt. I did not release it until Li Miaoer sagged into my arms. Her voice was so faint I could barely hear. Younger sister, I think I did something wrong. My other hand, hanging at my side, finally moved. I held her gently. It is all right, elder cousin. I have already taken revenge for you. With difficulty, she raised her head. The light in her eyes was fading. Tears continued to fall. Was I very foolish? That person told me you would soon lose your husband, then fight me for the crown prince. She said you would make me lose my child and leave me alone for life. I did not want that. I had vaguely guessed this ending. In the original world, Wei Lin and I married and investigated the old case together. The truth eventually became known beneath heaven. Perhaps something happened during that process that forced him to fake his death and restore his identity as crown prince. At that time, my relationship with my cousin must still have been good. She carried the false crown prince's child. To save her life, I would advise her to end the pregnancy. That was exactly what I would do. But somewhere, the story had been distorted. A soul from 1,000 years later understood it as an entirely different tale, producing the tragedy before us. Li Miaoer slid lower against my shoulder. Until her last breath, her lips seemed to form one word. Sorry. I closed her eyes. Goodbye, elder cousin. The words I had spoken in the alley that night were meant for the Grand Princess's people. I deliberately let them know I had discovered the truth. They had lost the hidden matron and were searching the city for clues. An attack in the street would naturally draw their attention. When I overturned the second stall, I noticed a fish lantern booth crowded with people. At its far edge, the end of a saber hilt showed. I immediately formed a plan. I spoke clearly enough for the attackers to hear, ensuring that the Grand Princess's people would have to kill them. As expected, when their leader raised his blade and moved to tear open my clothing, I did not avoid him. I merely lifted one arm to shield my face. My sleeve slipped back, revealing the sky-blue jade bracelet around my wrist, the Grand Princess's own gift. An arrow tore through the night behind me. The alley erupted in cries. When I opened my eyes again, a guard extended his hand. "Miss, the Grand Princess requests your presence." In the audience hall, the Grand Princess sat behind a fragrant pearwood table and poured tea. "I truly underestimated you." I placed before her the jade pendant Wan Yang had traded her life to preserve and told the story I chose to reveal. My father died a terrible death. To this day, his remains have not been returned home for burial. Whenever the elders of Huai'an mention him, they curse his name. Even now, people point accusing fingers at his memory. I wiped my tears. "Your Highness, I never intended to interfere in an imperial secret. I only wish to clear my father's name. Stand." The Grand Princess silently finished a cup of tea before bending to help me rise. Her gaze passed over my wrist. "When I first met Wei Lin, I believed he was a promising young man. I intended to make an exception and support his career, so I approved you as his future wife. No wonder I felt close to that child when I first saw him." She smiled faintly. "He carries the blood of our imperial family. Continue wearing this bracelet. It exceeds your present rank, but once you enter the Eastern Palace as a secondary consort, people may notice. Since it was bestowed by me, no one should dare speak carelessly." Eastern Palace, secondary consort. My fingers moved slightly at my sides. I said nothing. "What is it?" The Grand Princess patted my shoulder, lightly yet with the weight of a mountain. "Qingyi, you are a clever child and I like you. Unfortunately, your birth is too low. You must understand that if the Crown Prince had not been exchanged at birth, you would not qualify even to enter the Eastern Palace as an attendant concubine. Are you dissatisfied?" "No." I slowly raised my head. A face warm and polished as jade appeared in my mind, then faded. My voice was quiet but firm. "Your Highness, the great vengeance of my family has not yet been repaid. How can I speak of marriage? I have something even more important to report." I glanced at the others in the room and stopped. The Grand Princess understood. She dismissed everyone and ordered secret guards to seal the area. Only then did I continue. "The An family is preparing to rebel." The Grand Princess poured tea for me herself. I watched steam rise while green leaves floated and sank. "Your Highness must know that Consort Anne's youngest brother was adopted into a collateral branch in Huai'an. The imperial family watched him for years. He was violent, indulgent, stupid, obese, and useless. Several years ago, he began believing that the blood of beautiful women could grant immortality. He searched everywhere for prescriptions and filled his residence with Taoists. Because he appeared to be nothing but a mad wastrel, the imperial family withdrew its hidden guards." I lowered my eyes. The Taoists were not refining immortality pills, they were making explosives. The knowledge was too advanced for this age. I understood only because the foreign soul had revealed it. While preparing for my wedding, Li Miaoer had repeatedly come to boast and once let the truth slip. Was it not only because you discovered the explosives Lord An had buried beneath the ancestral altar during the imperial sacrifice and saved the royal clan that they accepted you? The Crown Prince adored you so much that he dismissed the entire harem and promised that you would be his only wife for life. Just wait. All of that will belong to me." She had revealed her final card because she had bribed the attackers that night and believed the knowledge of a dead woman could not matter. I took a sip of tea. My household died in what was declared a refugee uprising. Yet later investigation found no trace of the killers. Wei Lin once reviewed the case file. It was so clean that not a single flaw remained. "Your Highness, if a useless man truly possessed such ability, would he still be useless?" The Grand Princess was silent. "Do you have proof?" Then answered. "But it is worth a gamble, is it not? The Crown Prince's wedding is near. If I am correct, your Highness intends to act that day. Then deliberately leave a path open and let the false Crown Prince escape." Lord An had avoided imperial suspicion by accepting every woman sent to him, and swallowing every tonic they offered, even when he knew something was wrong. The Emperor had promised to preserve his bloodline. He had never promised Lord An would produce descendants. The false Crown Prince was the An family's only hope. Once he escaped, Lord An would certainly find him and use everything he possessed to restore him. That would be the best moment to catch every conspirator in one sweep. After hearing everything, the Grand Princess remained silent for a long time. At last she looked deeply at me. You truly are an extraordinary young woman. Your birth has not limited your vision. No wonder that nephew of mine likes you. If your words are true, you have rendered a great service to the imperial family. Tell me what you want. If it is within my power, I will grant it. The gratitude of someone powerful was best used while it was still fresh. If allowed to linger, that gratitude might curdle into a thorn in her throat, risking another tragedy like Consort Anne's. I had already decided. The Grand Princess believed I would use the service to demand the position of Crown Princess. She warned, "Too much greed is not wise," I answered. "In Wuyi Alley lives a beggar girl. I once received kindness from a mother and daughter living there. Please grant them legal status and enough support that they will never lack food or clothing." In the story I told, I concealed the matron's identity. The piece Wan Niang and I never obtained, I hoped those two could possess. The Grand Princess looked surprised. "Only that?" she asked again. "Nothing for yourself? Nothing you personally desire?" I lowered my head and began removing the bracelet from my wrist. I placed it respectfully at the corner of the table. My voice carried no emotion. "For myself, Your Highness, I want one life. Li Miaoer must die. She must die in the most painful way. After everything she pursued abandons her like a worn shoe. Only then might the person beneath the grave, the real elder cousin I once knew, avoid becoming a wandering ghost. When I first entered the Marquis's residence, she gave me warmth. Now it is time to repay her." I straightened my clothing and knelt to take my leave. My eyes did not return to the bracelet. Each step was small and measured, no more than about 4 inches, without a single mistake, as though no attachment remained. Even the Grand Princess could not resist calling after me. "What of Wei Lin?" I stopped. "Do you not wish to ask me for something related to him? Perhaps I can help you." I smiled and shook my head. "I am betrothed to a judicial officer of the Court of Judicial Review. That has nothing to do with the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace. It was only a misunderstanding. Why force it? All the entanglements of the original story could disappear. The affection between Wei Lin and me would have no chance to deepen." His position remained unstable. "Why create more waves? Enter the Eastern Palace as a concubine. If I were determined, I could always carve a road through that place. Winning Wei Lin's favor would not be difficult. But what then? Consort Anne had once been the most favored woman in the inner palace. The emperor had truly loved her. Did she not still end in madness? That was not the life I wanted. Rather than eventually looking at each other with hatred and drawing blades, it was better to preserve everything in its first beautiful form. At least whenever I remembered him, only good things would remain. I walked forward, each steady step opening like a lotus blossom. Only after I had gone far beyond the Grand Princess's residence and reached a deserted alley did my tears fall like rain. I had not warned Wei Lin about the events of that night. He had truly searched for me for days. His fair face had turned wan. Dark shadows lay beneath his eyes. Stubble marked the jaw of a man who always loved cleanliness. Even the clasps at his collar were fastened incorrectly. He had not slept well. More accurately, he had not slept at all. The Grand Princess had kept me under guard as leverage while her people investigated every clue from the old case. In the performance that day, more than half the evidence had come from my hands. At last the truth stood before the world. People crowded around Wei Lin in the Eastern Palace, offering congratulations and flattery. I remained in an unnoticed corner and called a steward. "Please return my cousin's body to the Marquis's residence." "Chinger." I had just turned to leave when his voice stopped me. Wei Lin pushed through the crowd. He had found me with a single glance. His eyes seemed rooted upon me, lingering with such longing and relief that they refused to move. Then he ran straight toward me. "Where did you go?" He held me tightly. His dark eyes were bright as the sun, so warm that they made one want to cry. He continued without pause. "Where have you been these days?" "I searched everywhere. The Eastern Palace is dangerous today." "Why did you come? Let me see. Are you hurt?" Every word made my heart pound. It was a day suited for marriage. The Crown Prince's residence was covered in red. Even the blood on the ground was red. People hurried everywhere, clearing the aftermath. Gradually, I heard nothing. I saw nothing. Only Wei Lin remained in the world, and above us hung the large gilded red characters for double happiness. The mortal world shone brilliantly. The sunlight was beautiful. Wei Lin's brows and eyes were so gentle. His gaze overflowed with concern and joy. Since Wan Niang died, I had never again received such warmth. The love of a young man could not be concealed. It filled him until it seemed ready to spill over. He bent down. His entire body appeared to glow, radiant as the clouds. He could not hide his smile. "Chinger, your husband is the Crown Prince now. No one will ever dare bully you again. Whatever you want, I can give you. We will." It felt as though icy water had poured over me from head to foot. I woke from the dream. My heart hurt as though a hand were crushing it. From the high platform, the Grand Princess lowered her eyes and watched everything coldly. Wei Lin still dreamed of our future. It was not that he lacked political insight. His identity had changed too suddenly for him to adjust, and he instinctively believed I would remain beside him. "All right," I said, blinking and lying calmly. "I will stay beside you and see everything through with you." But Your Highness, more and more people would gather beside him, and the person I wanted was not the Crown Prince. It was only Wei Lin. On the third day after the false Crown Prince escaped, Lord An finally emerged from hiding and took away the nephew he had protected for years. He had been cautious to the extreme, but the Grand Princess's people still followed him. The trail ended at a mine outside the capital. Torches burned brightly. Inside were tens of thousands of weapons and crates of explosives piled like mountains. With these, and with your legitimate claim, you only need to raise your banner and declare that everything was invented by that vile woman, the Grand Princess. Then how could you fail to march on the capital and reclaim the throne? Lord An held his swollen belly, his face red and twisted. Every member of the Li imperial clan deserves death. Without my father, my elder brother, and my elder sister, could that man ever have sat securely upon the throne? Even if the realm falls into chaos, it must not remain in their hands. They did not care how many people would die. They did not seek the throne to bring peace beneath heaven. They wanted only to satisfy hatred. After years of swallowing medicines and living with constant caution, Lord An's mind had twisted into madness. He wanted the entire world buried with his resentment. The false crown prince had also been ruined by indulgence. The emperor's feelings toward him had always been complicated, sometimes loving, sometimes cruel. Under the influence of 5-mineral powder, he became increasingly unstable. If the dead Duke Defender of the Realm and the young and general, who once fought on the battlefield, could see their descendants now, what would they think? It was truly a twisted and tragic bond. While they remained lost in their fantasies, Wei Lin mobilized soldiers. It was the first campaign he commanded after restoring his status as heir to the Eastern Palace. He fought beautifully. Troop deployment, strategy, and command came naturally to him. In less than half an hour, the rebel force was destroyed. Lord An died under a storm of arrows. The false crown prince was struck several times and fell in the fighting. Before death, he stared at Wei Lin with hatred. "All these years I did all the work only for you to reap the reward. Unfair. This is unfair." Villains always seem to love those words. Wei Lin did not care. He aimed at the man's heart and looked down coldly. "If your virtue had matched your position, why would I have objected to letting you remain crown prince?" He meant it. Recently, however, Wei Lin had been unhappy. He realized I was deliberately avoiding him and could not help resenting it. Our wedding had originally been scheduled for those days, but one event after another arrived until no one mentioned the marriage. What awaited him in the capital was a grand investiture announcing his identity beneath heaven. It should not have been so urgent. Then several days earlier, a long disfavored consort in the cold palace threw herself into a well. The old emperor was already gravely ill. When he heard, he coughed blood and weakened further. The imperial physicians concluded that little time remained. The investiture was moved forward. The palace bustled day and night. Wei Lin spent every hour learning to handle state affairs. We did not meet for a long time. On the day he was summoned to try on his new court robes, the young man looked magnificent. Anything would have suited him. Wearing the clothing of a palace maid, I went to the Grand Princess to collect my new identity papers. I would receive land and money. I would travel far away to Qinzhou and spend the rest of my life in comfort. Perhaps the arrangement was deliberate. She wanted me to see that the distance between our ranks was now an abyss, and I carried too many schemes. The country had nearly fallen into disorder because of one woman. It did not need another. 33 palace steps separated Wei Lin from me. They were extravagant, everyone covered in gold and shining beneath the sun until my eyes reddened. Each step seemed a heavenly chasm. Holding the thin papers, I walked out of the palace while everyone else moved inward. When I looked back, the master of ceremonies was reading the proclamation aloud. Civil and military officials knelt together. The Grand Princess personally placed the crown upon Wei Lin. He stood tall and jade-like upon the platform. I remembered my first year in the capital. At Chunfeng House, he had separated himself from the surrounding noise and entered that brilliant red world with a paper fan in his hand. The fan was still inside my luggage. It was the only thing I had once asked him to give me after our engagement. Wei Lin was like clear wind after rain, bright, open, and destined for a splendid future. He deserved such a life. I left the capital and began the journey to Qinzhou. Along the road, my mind remained distant. I reacted slowly to the outside world, therefore I did not know that an earth-shaking scene had occurred in the capital behind me. During the investiture, the new crown prince refused to accept the ceremony. The master of ceremonies sweated heavily. Even the grand princess urged him twice. Wei Lin stubbornly shook his head. On an occasion like this, I want to wait for Qinger so we can kneel together. He stood straight as a young pine. I have learned the rites. If a crown prince has a wife, husband and wife must receive the decree together and bow to heaven and earth together. Qingyi is my wife. If she is not here, I cannot kneel. He looked directly at the grand princess. Imperial aunt, did you not say you had sent someone to bring her? Qinger did come, but Qinger has already left. The truth could no longer be hidden. Wei Lin turned and walked away. Then, as though remembering something, he stopped and looked back. Aunt, I know what worries you, but I want you to understand that I am not my father, and Qinger will never become consort Han. Wind lifted the hem of his robe. He summoned a fighting horse, mounted and galloped out of the palace. Imperial aunt, after I catch up to Qingyi, I will return and accept punishment. There had never been a choice between the realm and the woman he loved. Having reached this position, he wanted the realm, and he wanted her as well. Thank you for supporting Panda. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Now, let's begin story 2. My name is Chen Qinghan, the eldest legitimate daughter of the general who defends the realm. Whenever people in the capital mentioned the Chen family, 9 out of 10 would shake their heads and click their tongues. In their minds, everyone in our household, old and young alike, had a fierce face and spent all day swinging blades and axes until the courtyard was smashed to pieces. They could hardly be blamed. My mother died when I was young, and father tossed me into the frontier army camp to be tempered almost from the moment I was born. At 10, other noble girls were learning embroidery and the zither. At 10, I could hoist a wild boar onto my shoulder and run around 3 hills without getting out of breath. I was born with extraordinary strength and sturdy bones. I had only 2 great pleasures in life: gnawing marrow from bones and admiring handsome men with fair skin and smooth faces. Unfortunately, every man at the frontier was blackened like charcoal and covered in a wild beard. After waiting forever for father to be recalled to the capital, I swore to heaven that for the rest of my life I would hide the arms that could punch an ox to death. I would powder my face, wear silk dresses, and become a gentle, virtuous little wife. That afternoon, fine rain drifted over the glazed roof tiles of Yichun Lane. I sat on the second floor of Yafeng Restaurant, with one leg crossed over the other, holding a length of sugarcane as thick as a child's wrist. The scenery was poetic, but I was too lazy to use a knife. I simply bit down with a crack, stripped off the hard rind, and noisily chewed out the sweet juice. Just as I was about to spit out the pulp, my gaze swept over the rain-soaked lane below, and my jaw froze. Through the gray curtain of rain, a pale blue oil paper umbrella slowly approached. Beneath it walked a man in a dark blue official robe of the Court of Judicial Review, pressed so perfectly that it did not have a single wrinkle. He was tall and slender, his robe fluttering in the chilly wind. His features were cool and otherworldly, like an immortal who had wandered down to the mortal realm. His brows were faintly drawn together, and his nearly translucent skin carried the sickly pallor of someone chilled by the rain. He lifted his sleeve to cover his mouth and coughed softly a few times. At the sight of him, my blood boiled with infatuation. Heavens above! That refined, half-starved beauty, that delicate air that made me want to pull him into my arms and ravish him, protect him. Was this not the husband of my dreams? I glanced at the jade token hanging from his waist and immediately recognized him as Pei Zheng, the youngest Chief Justice of the Court of Judicial Review in the Great Zhou dynasty. Rumor said he had risen from a poor family and could solve cases like a god, yet his methods were so ruthless that criminals lost their courage at the sound of his name. It was also said that he was obsessively fastidious and too physically weak to truss a chicken. So what if he could not truss a chicken? I could truss every chicken in the house. Without another thought, I spat out the sugarcane pulp, scrubbed my lips with my silk sleeve, gathered up my gold-threaded skirt, and raced downstairs at a wildly unladylike speed. The moment I reached the restaurant entrance, I deliberately slowed down. When I was precisely 10 paces in front of Pei Zheng's official sedan, I let my knees go soft and performed an exquisitely artistic face-first fall. Ah! I gave a choked, delicate cry and tilted toward a shallow puddle. Just as expected, although that aloof man was obsessed with cleanliness, he was still a righteous official at heart. The oil paper umbrella tilted. A slender, ice-cold hand reached out, accompanied by the faint scent of ink and a soft woody fragrance, and firmly caught my arm before the hem of my skirt touched the ground. I immediately took advantage of the moment, pressing my whole body against his blue robe. My fingers clutched his elbow as I raised reddened eyes to look at him. Lord Pei, thank you for saving me. I am Chen Qinghan. My health is terribly frail. The slightest wind makes me dizzy and I cannot stand any longer. Pei Zheng lowered his eyes toward the woman hanging from him. His long lashes shifted. His gaze moved over the hand gripping his robe. She claimed to be weak, yet her palm was distinctly warm, and the fingers digging into his arm seemed rather strong. Then he noticed her burning ears and slightly hurried breath. The truth was that I had sprinted down from the second floor too quickly. A trace of deep thought seemed to cross the Chief Justice's mind. He gently withdrew his arm and spoke in a clear, cool voice. Miss Chen, take care, the road is slippery in the rain. Have your maid escort you back to your residence. I thought to myself that he truly was a 1,000-year-old block of ice. He had recognized who I was without the slightest change in expression. But once I, Chen Qinghan, chose my prey, there was no chance of escapes. Pei Zheng continued deeper into the lane to inspect the scene of a crime. Unwilling to give up, I kept 20 paces back and secretly trailed behind him. The lane grew quieter, and the rain thickened into a mist. Suddenly, several black-clad figures burst through the air from 3 surrounding tiled rooftops, each radiating murderous intent. Bright blades reflected the cold daylight and drove straight toward Pei Zheng's throat. Pei Zheng, prepare to die, the leader roared. I panicked. His enemies had come for revenge. How could someone so refined and delicate withstand them? Instinctively, I gathered strength in my feet, ready to rush forward and twist the assassins' necks. But the instant I moved, I forced myself to stop. If I revealed my divine strength now, my plan to become a delicate little wife would be ruined. Inspiration struck in the crisis. I dashed over at lightning speed, darted behind Pei Zheng, grabbed his belt with both hands and screamed at the top of my lungs, "Ah, help, my lord! Watch out!" Pei Zheng nearly toppled backward when I clung to him. But in that life-or-death instant, my future husband displayed magnificent masculine courage. He pushed me behind him, drew the long sword at his waist with his right hand, and gritted his teeth as he stood in front of me. Miss Chen, hide behind me. It sounded heroic, but his sword was as limp as a noodle. Who could he possibly cut down with that? When the assassin's blade was about to fall on his shoulder, I slipped my left hand into the brocade pouch at my waist beneath my wide sleeve. That morning I had bought a bag of dried walnuts and had not had time to eat them. I pinched one hard walnut between my thumb and middle finger, narrowed my eyes, secretly gathered 30% of my strength and flicked it. Whoosh! The walnut tore through the air without a sound and struck the pressure point just above the leader's kneecap with a sharp crack. Crunch! Bone split amid a miserable scream. The assassin, who had been flying through the air, suddenly lost all momentum. His knee folded at a grotesque angle, and the assassin crashed at Pei Zheng's feet. The sword in Pei Zheng's hand happened to swing down at that exact moment, and its hilt struck the falling assassin's shoulder. He stared blankly at the sword in his hand, then at the enemy foaming at the mouth on the ground. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Since when had he become so powerful? I could not miss such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I threw myself forward, wrapped my arms around him, and excitedly rubbed and stroked his chest. My tear-soaked voice overflowed with worship. My lord, you were magnificent. Such swordsmanship could shake heaven and earth. I was nearly frightened to death. I admire you so much I could die. The assassin on the ground clutched his swollen knee, sweat pouring down his forehead, and glared at me with hatred. Damn you, vile woman. A hidden weapon clearly shattered my knee. The other 2 assassins saw their leader collapse in such an uncanny way, then looked at Pei Zheng's unfathomable expression. Terrified, they exchanged glances, released a cloud of poisonous smoke and retreated. Pei Zheng sheathed his sword, his chest rising and falling slightly. He looked down at me, still plastered against him, and frowned. But this time, he did not immediately push me away. His gaze swept over the ground. His pupils contracted when he saw pieces of walnut scattered in the rainwater beside the assassin's knee. Then he looked at Chen Qinghan, who was trembling like a leaf in his arms, and the suspicious reasoning habits of the Chief Justice began operating at astonishing speed. The Chen family was a military household, yet this girl was timid as a mouse. A walnut had been smashed to pieces. Had she, in her terror, randomly thrown the food she carried and accidentally struck the enemy's vulnerable point? Could anyone be that lucky? Or was something else hidden behind her fear? Miss Chen, Pei Zheng spoke in a low voice, removed his rain-soaked outer robe, and draped it over my shoulders to cover my thin dress. You were frightened today because of me. Tomorrow, I will personally visit the Chen residence to apologize. I lowered my head to hide a triumphant grin that almost reached my ears. Very well, I will await you. The next morning, just after sunrise, a carriage from the Court of Judicial Review stopped outside the grand gates of General Chen's manor. The steward led Pei Zheng into the front courtyard. At that moment, my father, General Chen, was bare-chested, revealing a scar-covered chest and bulging muscles. The old man was in high spirits, holding a three-legged bronze sacrificial cauldron that weighed at least 440 pounds. He stood in the center of the courtyard, grunting as he repeatedly squatted and rose to train his strength. Ha! One more! Father roared, sweat streaming down his body. I was sitting on the veranda cracking melon seeds while waiting for Pei Zheng. The sight nearly sent my soul out of my body. It was over. Violet's house also told would scare away my sickly, slender husband. When Pei Zheng walked through the moon gate, he happened to see Father lifting the cauldron. At the same time, I turned and shot Father a knife-sharp look. Its meaning could not have been clearer. Put that cauldron down at once. If you ruin my image as a gentle lady, you will not get meat for lunch. General Chen had dominated battlefields for decades. He feared neither heaven nor earth. He feared only his daughter's anger. The old man panicked under my glare, and his hand slipped. Boom! The enormous bronze cauldron dropped from high above, pulverized 3 blue paving stones, and buried itself deep in the ground. The impact was so great that even the bamboo beside the wall trembled. Pei Zheng flinched and stepped half a pace backward. His already pale face turned even whiter. Father saw Pei Zheng appear, and then noticed the look on my face that threatened to eat him alive. He immediately understood that this was the man his daughter had been briefing him about for the past few days. The old general's acting skills burst into full force. He rubbed his hands together, and his ferocious face suddenly crumpled like a withered chrysanthemum. Then he hurriedly collapsed into a grand armchair nearby, panting as though he were about to breathe his last. Lord Pei, you have arrived? This humble man has been discourteous and made a spectacle of himself. Ah, this old body of mine. Pei Zheng cupped his hands in salute. General Chen's heroic vigor has not diminished since your younger days. Such a heavy bronze cauldron. What heroic vigor? Father interrupted, beginning his tearful performance. My lord, you do not understand. The Chen family may look glorious from the outside, but we are rotten within, especially my Qinghan. The old man pointed at me as I sat demurely twisting a handkerchief. The child was born prematurely and lacked her mother's milk. Her body has always been as fragile as paper. Yesterday, I heard that she was frightened on the road. When she returned home, one cough broke 3 of her ribs. I was so distressed that my insides nearly shriveled up. I stayed awake all night. I thought, Father, you are overacting. If one cough can break 3 ribs, what does that make me? A scrap of cloth. Yet the most miraculous thing in the world happened. I secretly raised my eyes to observe Pei Zheng. My blue-robed husband stood silently in the courtyard. His gaze moved from the deep crater left by the bronze cauldron to General Chen's massive, intimidating body, and finally settled on me. That day, I wore a pure white silk dress. A thin layer of pearl powder made my face look pale, and my sleeves had ridden up slightly, revealing my slender wrists. The suspicious Chief Justice's overactive imagination immediately went into overdrive, piecing together a perfect tragedy. General Chen was rough-tempered and valued physical strength. How could such a crude father know how to care for a daughter? A bronze cauldron weighing hundreds of pounds had fallen, yet he had not changed expression. Violence must be an everyday occurrence in the Chen household. Qinghan had grown up in the harsh environment of a military camp. Her hands had felt unusually warm yesterday, because she had surely been forced, year after year, to perform heavy labor and boil water and cook for those brutes. She claimed to be frail, while the general said that coughing had broken her ribs. Clearly the Chen family treated her cruelly, and did not even feed her enough, leaving her utterly frail. As for the way she clung to me yesterday and praised my heroism, the poor child must have lived under oppression for so long that she had developed delusions. When she saw a man willing to stand in front of a blade for her, she regarded him as a divine savior. Once Pei Zheng reached this conclusion, the way he looked at me immediately changed. All cold suspicion vanished, replaced by overwhelming compassion. A delicate young woman had been trapped in a living hell among crude warriors. Without someone to rescue her, she might not live past 20. Pei Zheng drew a deep breath. His blue robe stirred as he decisively cupped his hands and bowed to Father. His clear, resolute voice echoed through the front courtyard. General, yesterday's incident was caused by my carelessness, and Miss Chen became involved because of me. Although I was born into poverty, I am now a pillar of the court. I believe I am capable of protecting her and keeping her safe for the rest of her life. My lord, you mean? Pei-jung raised his head and looked directly at me with clear eyes, enunciating every word. I came today not only to apologize, but also to formally ask for her hand. I am willing to present the proper betrothal gifts and welcome Miss Qinghan into my residence. I swear to care for her with all my heart and never allow her to suffer the slightest wind, frost or hardship again. Pfft. Father nearly choked on his own saliva and hurriedly covered his mouth to stop the roar of laughter about to burst out. It was that easy to marry her off? The old man nodded like a chicken pecking rice. I agree. This old man agrees. Lord Pei is truly righteous. I entrust our Qinghan entirely to you. Sitting on the steps, I hurriedly raised my handkerchief to hide my face and turned away in feigned shyness. Pei-jung, my dear Lord P, your skill at solving cases was divine, but this time you had misjudged the case of a lifetime. After that thunderous proposal at the Chen residence, our marriage was arranged at astonishing speed. To nurture our feelings before the wedding, Pei-jung made an exception and took half a day away from the government office. He chartered a small boat on Tai Lake so we could admire the lotus blossoms. The wind blew softly that day, sending ripples across the lake. Pei-jung wore an ivory silk robe and stood with me at the bow, explaining the laws of Great Zhou. Qinghan, under Volume 3 of the Great Zhou Code, if a husband and wife separate and the fault lies with the husband, he must compensate her with 30% of his property. But you need not worry. In this life I will never divorce my wife. Only death could part us. What I mean is, we will grow old together. Mesmerized by the sharp line of his profile and the slight movement of his Adam's apple, I obediently nodded. Whatever my husband says is right. I will listen to you in everything. Just as the air between us grew warm and flirtatious, a 3-story pleasure boat painted vermilion and decorated in gold shot around a bend in the waterway. Banners covered the sky, and noisy music and singing filled the air. One look at the emblem told us it belonged to the 5th prince, who was notorious for idleness and debauchery. The royal boatman relied on his master's power and steers recklessly. He made an abrupt turn and sideswiped our boat with a violent crash. Boom! Pei-jung's small craft rocked wildly like a dead leaf in a storm. Lake water splashed everywhere, and the instincts hammered into my bones during more than a decade among soldiers instantly awakened. At the sudden danger, my feet unconsciously rooted themselves to the wooden deck as I secretly gathered strength through my lower body. The violently tilting boat immediately stabilized. From the waist down, I was as steady as a bronze pillar on Mount Tai, unmoved by the wind. But the next instant, I caught sight of Pei-jung. My husband was too weak to truss a chicken. The impact had knocked him off balance, and he staggered backward. The back of his head was about to strike the sharp edge of the railing. Oh no! If that beautiful, immortal-like head struck the railing, his looks would be ruined. My thoughts moved like lightning. I immediately released my rooted stance, let my legs go limp, and used the boat's momentum to launch myself through the air toward Pei-jung. I secretly tensed my arms and abdominal muscles until they were hard as iron, aimed myself beneath him, and slammed down onto the deck as a human cushion. Thud! Pei-jung was flattened against the wooden boards beneath me. His chest suffered a brutal impact, as though a boulder weighing more than 1,000 pounds had struck it. His face turned deathly white, and a strangled sound escaped his throat as he nearly stopped breathing. Lying on top of him, I wrapped both arms tightly around my husband's neck, buried my head against his flat chest, and wailed miserably. Ah, my lord, save me. I am afraid of water. The boat is sinking. I feel so dizzy. Pei-jung lay sprawled on the deck with stars spinning before his eyes and every rib aching. Yet when he heard the panicked sobs of the delicate wife in his arms, his overactive imagination lit up once again. She was so terrified that her entire body had stiffened, making her fall heavily onto him like a drowning person clutching a floating log. A deprived childhood, an abusive father, she must have been thrown into a cold lake when she was young, leaving such a deep psychological wound. He suppressed the pain in his chest that made him want to cough blood, and forced one trembling arm to pat my back. His voice was hoarse but gentle as he soothed me. Do not be afraid, Qinghan, I am here, we will not sink. After comforting me, Pei-jung slowly helped me sit up. He used the railing to stand, and his expression changed from gentle to as cold and forbidding as the king of hell himself. He took out the jade token of the Court of Judicial Review, pointed at the pleasure boat trying to escape, and coldly ordered the bailiffs accompanying him, detain that vessel by my command. It violated the rules of the waterways and endangered the life of a future titled lady. Revoke the 5th prince's permission to travel on Tithe Lake for 3 months. Give the boatman 30 strokes of the heavy board. I hid behind him and secretly watched the gaudy pleasure boat being escorted away by the court bailiffs. My heart as sweet as a lump of malt candy. My husband was most attractive when protecting his family. By the clear, pleasant days of the 8th month, our wedding finally arrived. Before dawn, the bridal attendants pinned me down to dress and make me up. The greatest hardship was the phoenix crown, hung with strings of pearls and forged from pure gold inlaid with jade. Afraid that the groom's family might look down on the dowry, General Chen had spent lavishly to cast a crown weighing about 11 pounds. To be honest, 11 pounds was light as a feather to a warrior woman who had once carried an ox on one shoulder and an ammunition chest on the other. I wore the crown with my neck perfectly straight and walked as swiftly as the wind. But after I sat inside the bridal sedan, carried by 8 men, and the wedding music began, I suddenly remembered my role as a delicate little wife. The bridal procession would circle the capital for nearly 2 hours. If I sat rigidly upright like a statue the entire way, it would look too suspicious. So when the sedan passed through the busiest street, I slightly lifted the red silk curtain, poked half my veiled head outside, and called in a coquettish, plaintive voice to the groom riding a white horse beside me. Husband, husband! Peijung's dark red wedding robes made his jade-like features even more beautiful. At my call, he hurried close to the sedan. My wife, what is wrong? The wind is strong. Be careful not to catch cold. I grimaced beneath the veil. The phoenix crown father had made is too heavy. My neck aches terribly. It feels as though the vertebrae in my neck are about to snap in two, and I can hardly breathe. That single complaint made Peijung's expression change dramatically. His mind began supplying the rest. Qinghan was already weak in blood and vitality. Old General Chen was truly muddle-headed. Giving her such a heavy phoenix crown was no different from trying to kill his own daughter. How could her slender body bear 11 pounds of gold? Stop the sedan, Peijung decisively ordered. Under the bewildered gazes of everyone in the capital, the imposing Chief Justice dismounted. Ignoring every wedding custom and rule of propriety, he walked beside the sedan. He lifted the silk curtain, slipped one long, steady arm through the window, and carefully supported the back of the golden phoenix crown for me. Husband, what are you doing? I pretended to be startled. I will walk and support it for you so your neck will not ache, Peijung answered firmly. A thin sheen of sweat covered his forehead, but his hand held the crown securely and shared its weight. Thus, for the remaining 3 streets, the distinguished Chief Justice of Great Zhou walked beside the bridal sedan, with his arm through the window, holding up his wife's phoenix crown. The people of the capital stared wide-eyed and were moved to tears by Lord Pei's devotion. Only the 20 Chen Manor guards, escorting my dowry, lowered their heads in unison, their shoulders shaking violently. They bit their lips until they bled to keep from laughing. Good heavens! The Chief Justice was supporting the crown of the young mistress who had snapped the horns off a crazed buffalo with her bare hands the other day. Their silent message was obvious. Lord Pei, take care of yourself. Late that night, the bridal chamber glowed red, and the dragon and phoenix candles flickered. Once the bed curtains fell, only the 2 of us remained. My weakness for handsome men broke free of every restraint. Beneath the candlelight, Peijung's red robe had fallen slightly open, revealing exquisite collarbones. The faint scent of ceremonial wedding wine lingered around him. I swallowed audibly. Husband. Grinning shamelessly, I sidled closer until I was nearly pressed against him, rubbing my hands together. A spring night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Let us rest. I will undress you. With that, I extended my claws, ready to strip the groom, consummate the marriage, and seal the deal for life. But the moment my fingertips touched his belt, Peijung suddenly retreated. With lightning speed, he shook out the thick brocade quilt embroidered with 100 children, wrapped it tightly around me from shoulders to ankles, and rolled me 3 times. He bundled me up like a tightly wrapped New Year rice cake, then firmly pressed me onto the bed. Husband, what game are you playing? I wriggled inside the quilt, blinking at him expectantly. Peijung sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed the disordered strands of hair at my temples. His eyes held the compassion and patience of a saint. Qinghan, stop making trouble. During the tea ceremony, General Chen privately warned me in great detail. Your father said that your vitality and blood are both deficient and that your entire constitution is severely depleted. You must never overexert yourself, or your lifespan will be shortened. I ground my teeth in fury. That damned old Chen had betrayed his daughter. He must have feared that I would become too enthusiastic and crush my husband's bones, so he invented this nonsense. I am fine, I am perfectly healthy, I can be good. Pei Zheng lightly patted my cheek, interrupting me as though soothing a child. I know you want to fulfill your duties as a wife, but to me, your health is most important. Tonight, and every night afterward, until the imperial physician has fully restored you with medicine, I will only hold you while we sleep. I will absolutely not touch you. After saying this, he removed his outer robe, carefully lay beside me, gathered me wrapped up like a New Year rice cake into his arms, and peacefully closed his eyes. His self-restraint was so absolute that even gods and Buddhas would have admired it. I was a warrior woman famous on distant battlefields, yet on my wedding night, the feast was right before me, and I was not allowed a single bite. Heat surged furiously through me. My eyes stung with grievance, and I could only grit my teeth and sob, as though overwhelmed by emotion. Beneath the thick quilt, my restless hand secretly slipped 3 fingers outside, grabbed the corner of a pillow stuffed with dried chrysanthemums, gathered my strength and squeezed. Crunch, crunch. Every dried chrysanthemum inside that corner of the pillow was instantly crushed into fine powder by my internal force, cooling some of my anger. Pei Zheng, just you wait. The day this lady removes her seal, you will not get out of bed. From the day I entered the Pei residence, Pei Zheng's meticulous care officially reduced me to the life of a helpless invalid. I drank 3 bitter tonics a day. If I walked 3 circuits around the garden, a maid immediately brought a sedan to carry me. If the wind grew even slightly stronger, my husband ordered every window shut, but the storms of household politics would not spare a virtuous lady like me. Pei Zheng had risen too quickly and controlled matters of life and death at the Court of Judicial Review, making countless civil officials red-eyed with jealousy. He himself was an impenetrable block of ice, so the wives of those officials turned their malice toward me. The crude, provincial legitimate daughter of a frontier general who had only recently arrived in the capital. One day, the wife of the Vice Minister of Personnel held a chrysanthemum tea party and sent an invitation specifically to Madame Pei. Pei Zheng intended to decline on my behalf, but I hurriedly gave several delicate coughs and pleaded with him. Husband, I am so bored in this residence that I am about to grow mold. Please let me go socialize with the other ladies. Pei Zheng reluctantly agreed, though he insisted that 15 guards accompany my sedan. The moment I reached the vice minister's residence, the tired old drama of the inner courtyards began. A circle of richly dressed titled ladies sat around a tea table. When I entered, they hid smiles behind their fans and began making veiled jabs. Oh, Madame Pei has arrived. I hear that at the frontier, the Chen family eats roasted meat with daggers. I wonder whether Madame has learned to use ivory chopsticks in the capital. My dear, you look terribly pale. Perhaps the climate does not agree with you. It is cold and drafty where we are sitting, so please make do with the cushion in that corner. They deliberately placed me directly in the draft, with no silk screen to block it. That was not all. The arrogant hostess personally poured me a cup of Tiaguanyin oolong tea. She appeared warm, but her intentions were malicious. My dear, do try it. This tea must be drunk while it is hot enough to burn the tongue, or one cannot appreciate its elegance. I lowered my eyes toward the steaming, scalding tea and inwardly yawned. Even as a child in the military camp, I had been too bored to play such petty tricks. Thank you, madam, I said softly. My slender finger, capped with a jade nail guard, reached out and accepted the porcelain cup. I raised it to my lips and blew gently. Then I deliberately drew a deep breath, frowned, and let my hand tremble as though I had no strength. Oh, it is too hot! I let my wrist drop and released only a tiny fraction of the strength in my arm, accidentally setting the porcelain cup down rather firmly on the corner of the vice minister's ancient tea table, made of extremely expensive hardwood. Crack boom! The sound rang out like a sledgehammer strike. The porcelain cup shattered, but more horrifyingly, the entire corner of the immensely sturdy table splintered into pieces. Wood fragments flew everywhere, and the whole table tilted to one side. Pastries and fruit spilled over the silk skirts of the ladies. Ah! The entire gathering screamed. Several faint-hearted women fell backward, their faces drained of blood. They stared at the corner of the table, once as hard as iron and now reduced to kindling, then at my delicate white hand curling fearfully against my chest. At that moment, a servant rushed in to report, "The Chief Justice Lord Pei has come to escort Madam home." When Pei Zheng stepped onto the veranda, he saw chaos, broken furniture, and his wife huddled tearfully in a corner. The instant I saw my husband, I gathered my skirt and threw myself into his arms, hiding my face against his blue robe as I sobbed. "Husband, I was so frightened. Your table was made from rotten wood. I only set the teacup down gently, but it collapsed." It startled me so badly that I dropped the cup and nearly burned my hand. The titled ladies were speechless. "Rotten wood? It was rare hardwood from the western regions, worth a fortune, 100 taels of silver for every foot of timber, and she called it rotten. What kind of monster was she? Pei Zheng hurriedly held me close and carefully examined all 10 of my fingers for scratches or burns. Once he confirmed that I had only been frightened, he abruptly raised his head. His usually cool peach blossom eyes now blazed with murderous fury as they swept over the trembling women. He silently cursed them. These vicious wives of civil officials had gone too far. They had used a rotten table to harm Qinghan. What if a splinter had pierced her? They had even made her sit in the cold draft. I must thank the ladies for entertaining my wife. Pei Zheng spoke each word as though it had been soaked in an ice cellar. Our Pei residence may be small, but we have no shortage of rotten firewood like this. We dare not aspire to your distinguished company. With that, he lifted me into his arms. His hold was somewhat strained, and his steps wobbled because I was a little heavy, but he maintained a majestic expression as he turned and carried me away. The next day, in his capacity as Chief Justice, Lord Pei reopened 3 old bribery cases involving the Vice Minister of Personnel and the husbands of several ladies from the Tea Party. He hauled them in for questioning through the night. The entire capital was thrown into turmoil. Terrified civil officials confined their wives at home and ordered that whenever the Pei residence's banner appeared in the street, everyone should automatically keep a distance of roughly 100 feet. Near the end of autumn, Pei Zheng took charge of a major case involving the notorious Green Forest outlaws of Shandong. The case had far-reaching implications, forcing my husband to remain at the government office and conduct interrogations for 3 days and 3 nights without returning home. On the 3rd night, black clouds covered the moon, and the bitter wind whistled through bare branches in the rear courtyard of the Pei residence. I was rolling restlessly across the large bed, having kicked the brocade quilt onto the floor. Several days of the invalid's diet prescribed by Pei Zheng had made my bones itch with pent-up energy. Suddenly, my exceptionally sharp ears caught the faint sound of a roof tile breaking near the courtyard wall. We had nighttime visitors. I opened one eye and peered through the window. In the dense darkness of the courtyard, about 15 black-clad men with broadswords in hand were creeping toward my bedchamber. Their leader whispered, "Capture the sickly wife of that dog official Pei Zheng. We will trade her for our chief's life at the government office." My eyes immediately lit up like lanterns. At last, a chance to stretch my muscles. I swung my legs off the bed without bothering to put on shoes and walked barefoot to the rear veranda. Passing the small kitchen, I casually picked up the thick black ironwood carrying pole used for hauling water. Standing in the corridor's shadows, I rotated my wrists and established extremely strict rules for the night's operation. First, dislocate their jaws so they couldn't scream and wake the maids. Second, break only collarbones or shoulder joints. Under no circumstances was any dirty blood to splash across the granite floor. If Pei Zheng came home tomorrow and saw blood there, his obsession with cleanliness would flare up again. The 15 black-clad men had just reached the veranda when they saw a ghostly figure in white, long hair loose, glide out of the darkness. The leader had only managed to begin the word "who" when a black blur swept straight down. Smack, crack. The ironwood pole followed a perfect arc and struck his shoulder decisively. More than 1,000 pounds of force drove into the joint, and his shoulder gave way at once. At the same time, the pole twisted lightly and tapped his lower jaw. His jaw popped out of place to one side, his mouth fell open, and the miserable scream surging up his throat became nothing more than a muffled sound. Good, no blood. 10 points. I whispered praise to myself, planted my foot, and shot into the middle of the assassin's formation. In the silent night of the Pei residence, there was no clash of blades and no heaven-shaking screams. There was only a regular series of crisp sounds like a wooden temple block being struck. Smack, tap crack, smack, tap crack. Before a cup of tea could cool, all 15 murderous Green Forest outlaws lay flattened across the stone steps like harvested grain. Every one of them curled in pain with a ruined shoulder and a jaw twisted to one side. Veins bulged on their foreheads, and tears and mucus streamed over their faces, but they could produce only hopeless moans. I rested the carrying pole on my shoulder and released a satisfied breath. It had been far too long since I had enjoyed beating people so thoroughly. Just as I prepared to hide the weapon, torchlight suddenly blazed at the main gate, and hurried footsteps approached. Pei Zheng had received a secret report that bandits were attacking his residence. Frightened nearly out of his wits, he personally led 50 imperial guards straight into the rear courtyard. Ching Han!" His cry tore through the night, his voice trembling with a panic I had never heard before. I hurriedly threw the carrying pole into a camellia bush, dropped onto the steps, pulled a few strands of hair loose around my face, hugged my knees, and began to sob. When Pei Zheng rushed into the courtyard, the sight before him left both him and every imperial guard frozen like statues. Not one drop of blood stained the clean stone ground. 15 vicious bandits, each as huge as an elephant, lay neatly piled on top of one another, their jaws dislocated as they writhed like a heap of caterpillars. Meanwhile, his frail wife sat trembling on the veranda. "Husband!" I burst into tears and threw myself forward to hug his leg. "You came back too late. Those ferocious bandits charged in just now. I thought I would die tonight." But then the roof beam behind the veranda suddenly collapsed, and a great gust of wind blew through. They slipped and fell on top of one another. I was so frightened that I fainted 3 times before waking again. The assassins on the ground wanted to bite off their tongues and die. They glared at me together, tears pouring down like rain. They tried to shout through their dislocated jaws, their meaning obvious. "Liar! This demoness beat us with a carrying pole. Arrest her." Heartbroken, Pei Zheng knelt on one knee beside the steps and pulled me tightly into his arms, patting my back to soothe me. "It is all right now. It is all right, I am here." He glanced at the bandits, and his overactive investigator's imagination automatically supplied what he considered the most reasonable explanation. The mist had made the stones slippery. These foolish bandits had trampled one another, broken their collarbones, and then unluckily struck their jaws on the stone steps. Heaven truly has eyes and protected my poor wife. Pei Zheng rose and recovered the cold authority of the Chief Justice. He waved to the imperial guards. These green forest outlaws climbed the walls at night, slipped and broke their bones. Throw every one of them into the Court of Judicial Review's darkest dungeon to await execution. Do not allow them to shout and make a disturbance. He turned toward the stupefied steward. "Why are you still standing there? Prepare 3 bowls of calming medicine, and make Madam drink them at once. Tomorrow, summon builders to tear out every ironwood roof beam in the residence and replace them with silk curtains. Madam must never be frightened like this again." I buried my face against Pei Zheng's shoulder, successfully hiding a grin that made my shoulders shake. Tonight's exercise had gone well. Even 3 bowls of bitter medicine would not be a problem afterward. In the 10th lunar month, the autumn wind swept through rows of red maple leaves. At the Western Hills hunting ground, magnificent imperial banners covered the landscape. Deep buffalo horn calls echoed one after another, shaking the valley. The imperial autumn hunt was Great Zhou's most important event in the second half of the year. The emperor personally led civil and military officials, imperial clansmen, and nobles in a hunting ritual to honor heaven and earth, display the strength of the realm, and reinforce imperial authority. As Chief Justice of the Court of Judicial Review, Pei Zheng normally sat in court reviewing case files and belonged among the civil officials, but court rules were strict. Every man over 18 who held an official rank of the 3rd grade or higher had to ride into the hunting ground. That morning I rose early and personally chose a dark blue riding robe for my husband, woven with subtle cloud patterns. I secured his cuffs neatly with silver-threaded wrist bindings and rubbed a little pearl balm over his forehead to protect him from the dry wind. Pei Zheng wore a jade crown and a long sword at his waist as he stepped out of the main tent, his robe fluttering. Amid a forest of bearded military generals, his graceful aloof beauty was truly that of a crane among chickens. Several arrogant imperial heirs standing nearby saw Pei Zheng and clenched their teeth before turning away, unwilling to have their appearances dimmed by his. After staring at my husband in a daze, I allowed a maid to support me onto the viewing platform reserved for women. I wore a thick 100-pleat silk dress beneath a snow-white fox fur cloak that covered me from head to toe. Holding a small hand warmer, I occasionally raised a handkerchief and gave several delicate coughs. I performed the role of fragile Madame Pei, weak enough to be blown away by the wind, so perfectly that the surrounding ladies looked at me with deep pity. Yet beneath the platform, officialdom was treacherous, and hidden currents surged. Pei Zheng solved cases with uncanny brilliance and used ruthless methods. Recently he had reopened a series of corruption cases involving powerful officials in the Ministry of Personnel. Countless enemies secretly wanted his life. Boom boom boom, 3 urgent rounds of war drums sounded. The gates of the hunting ground opened, and hundreds of horsemen, civil officials, and military officers cracked their whips. Hooves thundered toward the hillsides covered in foxtail grass. The tall warhorse I had specially chosen for Pei Zheng was the gentlest horse in the Chen residence. It cantered along the edge of the forest. Suddenly, a nearly imperceptible cold glint flashed from the dense shrubs. A needle coated with a maddening drug, fired from some villain's hidden crossbow, buried itself in the horse's lower belly. The warhorse gave a painful neigh that tore through the blue sky. Blood-red veins instantly filled its eyes, and foam poured from its mouth as it reared and bucked madly in the hunting ground. "Lord Pei!" bailiffs and officials screamed. Pei Zheng was too weak to truss a chicken and had no strength or stability in his legs. The crazed horse threw him high into the air, his fingers slipped from the reins and he crashed from the saddle onto the sloping grass. His jade crown shattered, his long black hair spread loose, and a vivid streak of blood ran across his forehead. It did not end there. The maddened horse seemed to have lost every trace of reason. It wheeled around and raised both front legs. Its sharp iron-shod hooves hung high, as the beast prepared to bring its full weight more than 1,000 pounds down onto Pei Zheng's heaving chest. The emperor's expression changed on the platform. Imperial guards drew their blades and rushed forward in panic, but they were far too distant. From the viewing stand, my pupils contracted violently. Damn it! Someone dared lay a hand on my beautiful, half-starved immortal. In that life-or-death instant, I threw every household rule and every part of my gentle, virtuous, delicate wife disguise clean out of my mind. Out of my way, I roared like thunder. With both hands, I grabbed the 3 obstructive layers of my 100-pleat silk skirt and ripped them in one clean line from the waist to the hem, exposing the lightweight martial training trousers underneath. As I burst through the tent curtain, my right hand shot out like a dragon's claw and seized the black iron spear carried by the Imperial guard stationed beside the platform. It weighed about 88 pounds. The guard stood stunned, his hands still frozen in a gripping pose as he stared at his empty palm. I drove one foot against the wooden railing and transformed into a white blur, tearing through the wind over the heads of the screaming ladies. Whoosh! I landed in the center of the hunting ground like an avenging demon. When the 2 iron-shod hooves were only about 4 inches from Pei Zheng's chest, my heel drove into the earth. I twisted my waist and poured the full measure of my inborn divine strength from my core into my right arm. Break! The black iron spear swept up, creating a howling gale and smashed brutally across the joints of the mad horse's front legs. Clang-crack! A deafening impact was followed by the crisp sound of shattering bone. Under that earth-shattering force, the sturdy black iron spear shaft was bent into a semicircle. Both front legs of the 660-pound horse were crushed at once. In the same instant, my left hand flashed out like lightning, caught the back of Pei Zheng's collar, and effortlessly lifted his entire body into the air. I touched one toe lightly to the grass and glided roughly 100 feet backward, still holding my husband by the collar. Boom! With both front legs shattered, the enormous warhorse crashed into the place where Pei Zheng had been lying, gouging a deep crater into the ground. Dirt, stones, and shredded grass flew everywhere. The huge beast convulsed several times, then lowered its head and died. Cold wind shrieked across the western hills hunting ground. Heaven and earth suddenly fell into a deathly silence. On the platform, the emperor's jade thumb ring clattered to the floor. The 5th prince, who had been drawing his bow, stared so blankly that he released the string and sent his arrow into the feather plume on the helmet of the Imperial guard beside him. Hundreds of civil and military officials, guards, and noblewomen of the capital turned to stone. Their eyes bulged and their mouths hung open so wide that their jaws nearly dislocated as they stared at the center of the hunting ground. As the dust settled, the eldest legitimate daughter of the Chen family, the girl her father claimed had been frail from lack of her mother's milk since birth and could break 3 ribs with one cough, stood perfectly straight, her torn silk skirts whipping in the wind. In her right hand, she held an iron spear bent like a dead snake. Her left arm remained extended, holding the mighty Chief Justice of Great Zhou 2 feet above the ground by his collar. Pei Zheng hung in the air covered in bits of grass. Bewildered, he raised his peach blossom eyes. He saw the cold, heroic profile of his own wife, and the perfect outline of muscles swelling along her tensed upper arm beneath the thin silk. I blinked, slowly lowered Pei Zheng to the ground, and looked at the entire court staring at me as though I were a monster. My heart shattered. It was over. The seal on my powerful arms had officially broken. Back at the Pei residence, the main gates were tightly closed. The atmosphere in the inner courtyard was silent and oppressive enough to suffocate a person. Realizing that I had deceived the sovereign and tricked my husband, I very consciously prepared a scene of repentance. I ordered a maid to fetch an extremely ridged washboard made of Nanpu hardwood from the laundry room and place it squarely in the study. I let down my hair, removed every jade hairpin, and knelt straight-backed on the washboard while holding a steaming cup of ginseng tea in both hands. Lowering my eyes and biting my lip, I silently prepared for the worst. Pei-jung was proud and obsessively clean. His wife had lifted him by the collar before the emperor and every official at court, so he must have lost all dignity. If he wrote a letter of divorce, I would simply tie him up, carry him back to the frontier, and hide him there. Creak. The study door opened and Pei-jung walked in. An imperial physician had wrapped his forehead in pure white bandages. His face was pale and bloodless, and his steps seemed slightly unsteady. "Husband," I began softly, my voice full of remorse. "I deceived you. I am not frail at all. My arms are very strong. Since childhood I have run over hills carrying wild boars on my shoulders. What happened today made you lose face. You may beat or scold me however you wish, but please do not send me away. I promise to eat less in the future. Every day, I will clean your government office, carry water, and chop firewood for you." Before I could finish my prepared confession, Pei-jung's next movement left me completely stunned. He strode forward and decisively kicked the washboard away, sending it rolling into a corner. Then the proud, lofty Chief Justice dropped directly to his knees on the cold stone floor, reached out with both hands, gripped my shoulders, and pulled me straight into his arms. I raised my head in confusion and saw that Pei-jung's peach blossom eyes were bloodshot, their rims red and wet. Trembling, he lifted my rough, calloused hands and carefully pressed them against his pale cheeks. His hoarse voice tightened painfully around every word. "Qinghan, say no more. I know. I understand everything now." I stared at him blankly. "Husband, what exactly do you understand?" Pei-jung drew a deep breath and looked toward the ceiling to keep his tears from falling. The suspicious investigator's overactive imagination once again exceeded all human limits, weaving an epic tale of tragic devotion. "The Chen family commands great forces at the frontier, and the court has feared and watched your family for years. To protect the clan, your father had no choice but to disguise himself as a crude warrior. You are his eldest legitimate daughter and were born prematurely with deficient blood and vitality. The general loved his daughter and feared that you could not defend yourself amid the frontier winds and sand. That is why he ruthlessly forced you to practice a secret forbidden art from the western regions." "Is that not so?" My mouth fell open and my eyes nearly popped out. "A forbidden art? Exactly. You no longer need to force yourself to hide it from me." Pei-jung ground his teeth in anguish, his hand stroking along my arm. "That sinister forbidden art burns your vital essence, drains your lifespan, and ravages your sinews and bones in exchange for a momentary burst of divine power. How could a mere mortal shatter a savage beast's legs with her bare hands, and lift a grown man with one hand? At the hunting ground today, you risked your life to save me. You shattered the seals, and forcibly used the forbidden art." He hugged me tightly, his trembling voice overflowing with self-blame. "Now that its power has faded, your vitality must be suffering a terrible backlash. Your core is probably fractured and your meridians thrown into chaos. This eruption must have drained 10 years from your life. You foolish woman. What have I done to deserve having you risk your life to protect me?" Resting my head on his shoulder, I listened to the perfectly reasoned tale, spun by his imagination, so moving that it could make even gods and Buddhas cry. Inside, I could only prostrate myself in admiration before the Chief Justice's magnificent imagination. I immediately twisted my face in pain, let my chest rise and fall faintly, and coughed 3 times like a consumptive patient approaching death. My entire body softened and clung to his chest. "Husband, your intelligence is unmatched. In the end, I could not hide it from you. My chest hurts terribly now. It feels as though burning coals are scorching my organs. I did it willingly, as long as you are safe." Cough, cough. I think I am about to cough blood. "Qinghan!" Pei-jung's voice broke with panic. He lifted me onto the soft bed, turned and shouted toward the veranda. "Someone, take my official calling card and rush to the Imperial Medical Academy. Summon Deputy Director Zhang. Slice the 1,000-year-old ginseng and place it beneath Madame's tongue. Quickly." After the shocking incident at the Western Hills hunting ground, life inside and outside the Pei residence took an extremely peculiar turn. Deep in the rear courtyard, where no outsider could watch, my shackles were completely removed. I rolled up my silk sleeves. Whenever I was bored, I went to the back courtyard and carried 2 brimming buckets of well water in one hand, walking as lightly as a bird. With the other, I held a blunt axe and split ironwood logs with one gentle tap. Sometimes, when my hands itched, I carried the great stone flour mill from the eastern corner to the western corner just so I could admire the flowers. Pei Zheng sat by the window reviewing official documents. When he saw his wife moving mountains and overturning seas with her bare hands, not a trace of alarm crossed his face. He merely set down his brush, carefully carried out a bowl of bird's nest soup with snow frog jelly, stewed with rock sugar, blew it cool, and fed it to me by hand while reminding me tenderly, "Good wife, it is fine to stretch your muscles, but never use too much strength. If the forbidden art strikes back and makes you cough blood again, I will be heartbroken." I crunched the bird's nest obediently and nodded. "Yes, I will listen to you." But the moment we stepped beyond the gates of the Pei residence, Lord Pei's behavior reversed completely. Whether the weather was warm and pleasant at the spring festival or dry and sunny in early summer, Pei Zheng insisted that I wear a brocade cloak edged in rabbit fur. An oil paper umbrella remained over my head to block every ray of sunlight and every breath of wind. He walked close beside me with one hand supporting my elbow, carefully holding me as though I were an ancient porcelain treasure that would shatter if his grip faltered for an instant. Outside the gates of the Court of Judicial Review, passing civil and military officials watched the Chief Justice tiptoe along, while helping the female tyrant who had torn apart a mad horse take tiny steps. The court officials' expressions twisted in spectacularly varied ways. One imperial censor could not resist giving a soft cough and started forward to offer a greeting. Pei Zheng stopped at once. His gaze, sharp as a poisoned blade, swept over the gathering. He declared in a clear voice, "My wife damaged her internal organs while saving the sovereign. She suffers from a severe congenital illness and is exceptionally frail. She must be protected from wind and frost and cannot endure the slightest fright. Anyone who stomps or speaks too loudly and startles Madame Pei into a racing heart will be named in my memorial to the throne, charged and thrown directly into the Court of Judicial Review's prison to await interrogation." Everyone in the capital exchanged looks and finally made the same choice. They sealed their mouths, bent at the waist, and moved close to the walls. Not one person dared expose Madame Pei's supposedly frail constitution. After all, compared with arguing with a wife-doting madman like Pei Zheng, who had a terminal habit of making up entire stories in his own head, keeping silent to preserve one's life and teeth was clearly the wiser choice. The end.